Thank you. The pile's getting deep today. So today is Tuesday, August 27th, 2024. It's a little after 10. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And I've asked James Menlove if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd all stand, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. No invocation today. The first item is item 2A, which I presume is what a lot of people are here to talk about. And so the staff will present and the board of supervisors will discuss with staff several things. And then we have a number of people that would like to make comments toward that. And so we'll do it in that order. So item 2A is information and discussion regarding ordinance number 2023-08, the vacation rental and short-term rental uses, which was adopted by the Gila County Board of Supervisors on December 5th, 2023. And Randy or Michael, who's presenting this morning? Josh. Okay. Good morning, Josh.
Good morning, Chairman, Supervisors. So, we decided this originally came to us because there were complaints in a board meeting back in, I think, June or July of last year. And we had members of the public asking us, what we could do about this issue. The Board of Supervisors presented staff with the challenge of coming up with some kind of an ordinance that would match and work towards a resolution for the issues that the citizens brought up. Part of the reason this came to public health, so for those in the audience that don't know, Josh Beck, the Director of Public Health for Gila County. So the reason this came to public health is because part of that statute that allowed for an ordinance for short-term rental ordinances was the discretion to look at things from a public health and human services perspective and how we would handle those from a public health issue. So before I go any further, I wanted to bring up, since the last time we met, the State of Arizona Attorney General's office did rule. Wendy Rogers, our state representative, brought this to the State Attorney General's office to look at the ordinance that we have. I wanted to read a couple of highlights from this just to make sure that everybody in the room and the Board of Supervisors has this fresh on your mind. On page 2 of the of the response, because Gila County Ordinance number 2023-0A imposes regulations for public health and safety, rather than using a zoning ordinance specific to vacation and short-term rentals, the ordinance does not conflict with ARS 11269.17B2, which is the zoning ordinance, or the short-term rental ordinance. In his analysis, he said, "You've asked this office to consider whether Gila County Ordinance number 2023-08 conflicts with ARS 11269.17B2 by imposing requirements unique to vacation and short-term rentals," and the State Attorney General decided that it does not. Referring specifically to ARS 11269.17B1, the statute notes that those provisions may specifically include rules and regulations related to fire and building codes, health and sanitation, transportation or traffic control, or solid and hazardous waste and pollution control. I just wanted to bring those up as we go through some of the changes that we've made that we're presenting for this work session. So at the last work session, the board challenged us to relook at the ordinance based on some of the new issues that had been brought up. We went through, especially there was a really helpful line-by-line reading from the attorney that was working with the STR owners. He gave a pretty thorough line-by-line reading through the ordinance, which was actually very helpful for us. So we went through that and the complaints that happened, and let me go through some of the changes that we've presented to you for the ordinance. So from the original ordinance till now, under 2.2.1, we changed the permitted fee from $250 to $225. I can tell you, as the Director of Public Health, I have, as the board is well aware, I go through a lot of grants where I have to make sure that I budget as specifically as possible. Mr. O'Driscoll, the deputy county manager, had me go through this, and we really looked at every last thing that we could cut, where we could cut prices on the program that we want to use to administer the short-term ordinance, cutting some management from the person that would be overseeing the administration. We feel pretty good we could get this down to $225. I'm also a firm believer that any kind of ordinance or anything that we pass, especially in this area, needs to account for all the costs that we are going to incur. We didn't want this to cut further into general fund expenditures, especially for the community development department. So with that said, we felt pretty comfortable that we could drop the price down to $225 and that we'd be able to maintain what we need to do to administer this and get it off the ground without cutting into the general fund of Randy's department. Throughout the document, we removed the word revocation or revoke when it had anything to do with the permit or anything to do with the ordinance, and we changed those to suspension. It was one of the recommendations from the attorney, and we agreed it matched the language that we needed to have. So you'll see that revoked or revoke is removed throughout the document, and suspension is in its place. Another source of issue was the sentence, someone residing in or affixed to the front door, when we were notifying people of any issues or complaints or violations. Some of the people don't always live at the VRBO, so we added a sentence, it is in the property owner's responsibility to ensure that their information and address on file with the Gila County Assessor's Office is up to date, and that we would send any violations to the address on file with the Assessor's Office. So we would be making sure that we got it to where it needed to go so that those short-term rental ordinance owners would know about the violations. Another point of contention was the failure to respond to an emergency penalties. The original ordinance that we put through had a 1-hour response time. The attorney and the short-term rental ordinances owners brought up that that was probably a little difficult for them to make. We agreed with them in the board's challenge, and we think that 4 hours, I know they talked to Adam Shepard and the SO, and we all felt that 4 hours would be a good amount. So the wording has changed to 4 hours for the amount of time that they have to respond to an emergency situation where there was a police or some kind of other emergency. Another big thing, so probably one of the greatest touching points, was the occupancy limits. So part of my job as the health director is to make sure and enforce Title 36-601, which is public health nuisances. So 3 of the statutes or the languages that I do in there under 36-601 are number 8, the maintenance of any overflowing septic tank cesspools and the contents of which. Number 9, the pollution or contamination of any domestic waters. And number 16, hotels, tourist courts, and any lodging establishment that are not kept in a clean and sanitary condition. As we looked at those 3, I look at what our wastewater division does for any kind of septic or cesspool, and the rule that they use is 2 per room, which is why we went with an occupancy of 2 per household. As we looked through a lot of the, we try to do as much as we can, believe it or not, to really get the research. And when we looked through a lot of the short-term rental ordinances, we did see numerous, and we attached them to the board agenda for today. So you see all the examples on there of the 3- and 4-bedroom houses advertising 20, 30, or 40 people into a 22-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom house, which is where our issues came up, because the septic tanks or the cesspools, which a lot of these houses sit on, aren't capable of dealing with that amount of refuse. So when we were looking at that, we did agree with a lot of people. One of the things the intention of this isn't to do is to be punitive, and we were looking at children 5 and under. When we talked to Jake Garrett, now the assistant manager of our wastewater division, he agreed that those 5 and under, the waste that they produce is negligible compared to those systems. We thought it would be beneficial to be able to say, and we changed the language in this, to add the sentence, the occupant limits excluded children 5 years old and younger, to make it so that we weren't being punitive to families who, lots of times those children stay in the same room or they bunk together, and we were trying to make sure that we accounted for that. So that's why the change there. The last change that was discussed was the sex offender background checks. As a public safety measure, I certainly feel like this is something that we could have in the ordinance. I understand the limiting factors that make it possibly more complicated. So we did remove the language recommend or enforcing or requiring that to be part of there. But we did leave in there that the background checks are something that the county, especially us in public health and those in public safety, do strongly recommend. I think it's a good idea. When I did my research on short-term rental ordinances, to no fault of the short-term rental owners, VRB and Airbnb have both been sued multiple times. Most of the lawsuits that happen are usually around some kind of sexual predator, voyeurism, those type of things. Not saying it happens all the time, but it's enough that that was a concern of ours, which is why we originally put it in the ordinance. But I did feel pretty good that we left that language in there and just we're strongly recommending that those background checks are still held. And that rests the changes that we have so far.
Thank you, Josh. Supervisor Humphrey.
I'd just like to say, you know, I understand that staff has an awful lot of time in preparing the first ordinances, and I just want to say thank you for listening to the public the last time and working with their people to work with some of these changes that they wanted to make. And so I appreciate all the staff time and energy and research in making some of these changes. So thank you.
Supervisor Klein.
Josh, thanks. There's a lot to this, you know, not only from our angle, but also from our people's angle. So to start with, thanks for lowering that permit fee a little bit. It isn't much, but it's a little bit, and it's a good start. So that's good. I want to go back though to the response times, like when they're notified. Does email or phone calls, that is included in that as well?
Please be aware that that notification, that's from first responders. So it would be up to the sheriff that he's contacted someone and whether he needs someone on the site or whether he can deal with an email or in person or whatever he needs. But so it would be left up to the first responder of what he needs to be dealt with.
So because of the fact that all their information will be posted right there closer, we'll have all their information. First responders could contact them by phone or email or whatever.
Yes, what we're planning on doing is coming up with a list of all the short-term rentals and supplying that to the sheriff's office so that right now they don't know if it's, when they show up at a house, whether it's a short-term rental or not.
Mm-hmm.
So we will be providing them that information so that they would have all that contact information right there if they needed to get a hold of it.
So Randy, explain that to me, because if you have, let's just say, first responder medical unit arrive at a house at midnight at night, we're not gonna be around to provide that information. So how are they gonna get it?
Well, we're gonna provide it ahead of time, hopefully.
Okay.
Right? Once, you know, as we register everyone, we will provide that list to the fire departments and the sheriff's office.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I do not foresee that if someone has a stroke,
Mm-hmm.
that they really need to get a hold of the owner of the property.
Right.
They're gonna deal with that person right then and there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a party, someone pulled a gun, they probably want to get the owner there and find out who's responsible, who rented the house, all those kind of things that they may need the owner for.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's when they would be called. I don't think it's mostly medical at this time.
Okay, I want to talk about occupancy limits. That's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, back when we had our last work session, after that, I was thinking a lot about that. And to me, basically, I don't care if somebody maxes out their home and blows out their septic system. We as a county are not going to replace that. That's on them. If they're stupid enough to do that, that's on them. But I learned a little bit more. The more I talked to people, the more I asked. There's places, and I'm going to give you an example, and one of them is Christopher Creek. A lot of you may not know much about Christopher Creek, but the houses along Christopher Creek are just one after another. They're built right on the banks of the creek. Actually, there's decks that go out over the creek. A lot of them were on cesspools in the past. There's a lot of short-term rentals in Christopher Creek, or maybe not a lot, but there's plenty. Their biggest issue was they worked years trying to get a lot of these old homes up to snuff to where that creek would pass ADEQ standards and EPA regulations. And they've gotten there. They were able to do that. You know, and so in talking to some of those folks there, they're asking me about the short-term rental stuff and how's it going, where we're at. And I'm telling them my thoughts, and they're like, ooh, occupancy limits to us is important. Because if we have one or two of these homes blow out those systems again and contaminate that creek, we're back at square one and not in a really good light with ADEQ and EPA. So there's other factors that I'm finding when it comes to occupancy. Now, I've got your paper on those short-term rentals that offer lots of people in those houses. Quite honestly, they had to be stacked like cordwood to get them in there. But I want to go to another thing too. Last winter, I spent a lot of time in Gilbert down there working at cutting horse shows. And we stayed in short-term rentals. That's where we stayed. There were 6 of us. And we had to find a short-term rental that was adequate and would hold 6 people. We had to shop for that. There's short-term rentals that would hold 2 people, just a little casita on the side. There's other ones that would hold 3, 4 people. But to get to 6, we had to look for that 5-bedroom type place, 6-bedroom. And it was kind of amazing, and all the time I'm thinking about this situation we're in as well. But I go back to that, and I look at those places too, and I've had conversations with Bob Turner there a bunch about occupancy limits. You get a group of people, say 6 people, and they have kids. They may be older than 5 years old, and growing up as a kid, I know this for a fact, we all gathered up in a sleeping bag and slept on the floors. And so I think there needs to be more, in my opinion, looked at on the occupancy stuff. I'm not saying we should just open it up to whatever number, but I'm saying we're going to need to use our head and some common sense on trying to figure out just what would be an adequate number in these positions and in these places, And so I wanted to throw that out there. Sex offenders, that was in the original one. That background check was only for the person that was renting the short-term rental. That's the only one that would be run through the process to see if they're a sex offender or not. My personal opinion, but I don't own a short-term rental. If I did, I don't care. I'd run through the check anyway. But that's me. But the people that come with that person, that stay in that building, there is no sex offender checks on those people. Correct?
Correct.
And so, what? There again, it gets back to my personal opinion, whether you do it, whether you don't. That to me is the owner's responsibility. That's where it goes. And I know that talking to these communities, these really tight-knit communities, and that's where most of these establishments are, they have concerns, about that. But like I've told them as well, I don't foresee, I would never really foresee somebody that's a sex offender renting these places anyway, really. I would expect somebody else to be renting it. Now, who shows up to stay there for the weekend? I have no idea. Neither does VRBO or the rest of them, So to have that put back on the shoulders of the owners, I agree with that. I agree with letting them decide if they want to do it and keeping us out of that. It's not our responsibility. It's not our liability or any of that, but it would be the owner. So I agree with that one. And like the permit fee, like I said, I already appreciate you lowering that a little bit and see what we can work with. Now when it comes to the permit fee, Josh, as we go along, once this thing all gets settled out, whenever that may be, and once we get started, we're probably going to go back and look at it, the ordinance again in 6 months, a year, whatever it is, to see, in which case we would know what this $225 fee is doing. Is it capturing everything, or are we good there, or are we charging too much and need to lower it more? Something like that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. There was talk about the fines, the penalties in the first or the last work session we had. And I noticed you didn't touch any of that. Like I told Bob Turner the other day, I'm not gonna weaken on the penalties. And I want everybody to understand my reasoning for that. The only reason we are doing this ordinance is to try and correct the issues we have with the people that are running amok on these short-term rentals. That is the only reason. And to me, if we're gonna back those penalties off, we're not fixing a problem. You know, I can look at most people here today that's in this audience that has short-term rentals, never ever gonna have a problem. Haven't had, they're not gonna have. You know, the ones that do, they're not here. They're not gonna be here. And so my idea is that as long as we can leave those fees there to help push these people into flying right, that's what I'm about. And maybe in time, when we get there, we can do away with this ordinance. But so I appreciate you for not moving those fees.
And I would just reiterate that with my experience in Gila County since working under Mr. O'Driscoll when he was the Director of Health and on forward now with environmental health and what you do in community development is our directive and our intention when we meet every Monday morning and everything isn't to enforce first. We really are with restaurant inspections, with everything, and our goal is honestly to get everyone to a yes. It's not our intention ever to close anybody down or do anything that hurts their business. And we're pro the residents of the community. We really do work towards getting people to a yes. So part of the reason that we felt that also for the same reason as you did, that the fine was okay, is because if you get to a point that we're fining you in Gila County, it's usually because you've just refused to work with us to get you to a yes. Because that is always our goal in every situation that we ever have in our Monday morning meetings. We all get together. Sometimes Super Humphrey's on those calls. Our goal is to get people to a yes. So if we get to that point that we're fining someone, it's because you've refused to work with us, not because you did something wrong.
I appreciate that, Josh and Randy. For both of you, I do. And that's the way I feel on this deal here. The bottom line is if everybody had been running a good business and tending to it right, and we don't have neighborhoods complaining, we wouldn't be here today. And so thank you. That's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. I do want to thank staff and all of you for looking at everything that we talked about at the last work session and really taking a deep dive and making modifications as we requested. One of the significant ones that Supervisor Klein did mention was the requirement for background check turning more into a guideline for a background check and putting the responsibility on the homeowner, saying that if there is a problem, you should have done this background check, but we're not gonna tell you that you have to do it. It's highly recommended, okay? So that's one. And the septic system overload would occur or could happen at any level, whether it's a STR, whether it's just a regular family living there, you can overload your septic system. And so the occupancy thing we want to talk about, because I do believe that that is one of the major reasons that we are establishing the ordinance is an occupancy problem on a few. And then also, is 2 per bedroom the right number? Is that too small? So the way the ordinance reads right now, 3.6.10 says, the occupancy is limited to 2 persons per legal bedroom. And then you go into the children under 5 years old or younger. And I talked to Michael about this morning, and I said, could that be more or less a guideline rather than a hard number? A guideline. We recommend this in the same way we're doing with several of the other things. Because if a home or a septic or anything can handle 6 people in a 2-bedroom, they have a hide-a-bed in the living room or something like that, could we issue it as a guideline? And Michael said, well, we can take the whole thing out of there if you want. And I don't think that's the remedy to do that. So I spoke with Randy yesterday about this, and the thing that people need to understand is that the county official or the county employees are not going to be standing at the front door of the short-term rentals, counting people, making sure things happen. It's all going to be on a complaint basis. And so if the neighbors say, hey, they're hooting and they're hollering, they're making a bunch of problems, you can do that with 4 people or you can do that with 14 people. So the noise or the problem, to me, can be any amount. The safety of the occupants is important, so I know why we need to recommend a certain amount. So I don't know if we can do this as a recommendation or a guideline, but if we do, that allows some more flexibility with the folks that have an STR, that have like a really large bedroom, that they can put a couple bunks in there, and then maybe 4 people could be in that, you know, so there's so many different variables. And we have said from the very beginning, we don't want to hurt this industry. That's not our point. We don't want to hurt it at all. It brings a great economy to Gila County. Now, some of the advertisements that are in my packet here show 3 bedrooms, 12 people, 4 bedrooms, 16 people, you know, and that's how they're advertising that. And there's one here that's 22 people or something. Seems like a lot. That's where the cordwood thing comes in. So I think that if a violation occurs, or let's say a problem occurs, then we can go back and say, why was there 22 people in this home?
And I also want to bring up 2 small things here. When we say someone overloads a cesspool or something, some of those houses cannot have a regular septic system put back in there. And that's why we have some houses abandoned, because their lots aren't big enough to fix it. So if you screw up a septic system, it's not just a matter of, oh, well, we have some surfacing stuff that health has to deal with. That house can't be used anymore. And then also with the occupant load, I would also say that this is built on safety. I mean, if you're in a bedroom, that's one thing. That's that the windows are a certain size to get a fireman in with an air pack on. It's not for us to get out. It's for them to get in and get us out. So when you start putting them in closets and you start putting them in rooms that are not legal bedrooms, that becomes a safety issue, not only for the occupant, and they may not even know it. I mean, there's a bed here, there's a light there, and it's got a nice picture on it. This looks like a nice bedroom. There's no way for them to get out. And so this also becomes a safety issue when we get there. Now, there is a table in the building code that says, and don't quote me on the number, but it's like 200 square foot of a bedroom equals a person. You know, they do the same thing for a hospital and all that stuff. But most bedrooms aren't 400 square feet. You know, so, but we figure 2 per bed type thing. But I've also went and done inspections where there's 4 bunk bed sets. So there's 8 in like a 10 by 12 room. And if there's a fire there, it's pretty hairy trying to just see people walk out the front door. That doesn't happen a lot. People panic, especially if it's at 2 o'clock in the morning. That becomes a safety issue. So that's where we looked at that stuff.
Okay. And then also the 225, you know, I appreciate the reduction, but that's kind of the minimum I think that we feel that we can operate at right now to get started. So that's per listing in, say, Verbo or Airbnb, right? Per listing.
Correct.
So let's say someone has a large home and they rent out bedrooms in that same home to different people. Like say there's 3 bedrooms, there's 3 different listings, they would be charged 3 listings for the one structure.
Correct. We looked at that also is because if it's a bad one and they were to get suspended, that now if you went per address, now that whole thing, they lose all 3 rooms or all 3 residences that they have on the site, because they went under one. And there's no way really for us to track that. And when we go by listings, we can track, okay, this, let's just say there's a shed down the street that they're trying to use, and that's caused a lot of problems. Then we can deal with just that one and allow the property to keep other.
And honestly, from my opinion too, when you're trying to calculate a budget for this, each listing, since the whole point of the fee is the administration of the short-term rental ordinance, then each listing adds administrative time. So it doesn't matter if there's 7 in one or how you do it. If it's 7 listings, that increases the administrative burden, and we're basing the entire fee off of the administrative burden, not enforcement.
Okay, in a second, just to follow up then, if a person then said, I don't want to run my building as an STR, I'd rather do it as a B&B, okay? Does that fall under different ordinances? They have to live on the property, okay? And that doesn't fall into this ordinance.
No, that's a zoning issue, is B&B, and there's a state ordinance that goes along with it.
Okay, so zoning, and so that's an option.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Supervisor Klein.
Thank you, Chair. So the scenario that you gave, Randy, the other twist to that would be, it would be a benefit for us. If you've got one owner that owns 2 short-term rentals that are combined or whatever, where he's only paying the one fee, and he has an issue, and there's a chance of shutting down both those rentals because of that,
Right, because we only have one permit.
he or she may be more willing to fall in line and run the right business. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so I know in Pleasant Valley there, we have an owner or so that has more than one short-term rental on the property, on the same property. Not that they own 3 or 4 different parcels around Young, but they have a parcel of land that has 2 rentals on it. Let's just use for example. And that to me was something that I felt at the time, this was discussed at our last work session, was that, okay, then they pay the $250 back then or whatever it was, and it'd be under the same one. Same everything. So if they had a problem in one of those rentals and it led to the extent where they were shut down, both of those rentals would be shut down. I don't have a problem with that. And I'm gonna tell you why, is because that to me makes you really stand up and say, hey, I'm gonna fly right, because I don't want my rental shut down. I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to run the right business. I'm not saying people in Young are gonna do that. So you guys in Young, don't get me wrong. So, but see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Our whole goal is to make this handful of people fly right that aren't today. And so, and to me, if you have somebody in that scenario where they do have both of their establishments on the same parcel of property, yeah, pay the one fee, it's all under the same thing, let's go on. I think that's reasonable in my opinion. And so, I want to go back to the occupancy deal too. The one thing that we didn't talk about, and this is the reason, a lot of the reason the occupancy number was brought up, is the parking. In so many areas, in so many neighborhoods, the streets aren't very wide, the driveways aren't very wide, they're not very long, so there's not a lot of parking. And so people are parking in the street, plugging up the driveways, which is fine, but plugging up the streets is not fine when you can't get the sheriff's office or fire department down these roads. And that had a lot to do with the occupancy, especially when you're looking at, let's just say 15 people in one house. You know that there's gonna be a few cars parked out there. And in these neighborhoods that I've seen, there's not enough room to park those cars, so they do park on the street. And I will tell you that in Gilbert, when I was down there, the 6 of us, we had 3 vehicles, 4 vehicles, they had to be parked in the driveway. Now the residents didn't, they parked out on the street, in front of their house and things like that. But the short-term rentals that we stayed in, you parked in the driveway or in the garage, whichever it may be, but you did not park on the streets. And by parking on those streets, we've had those complaints from other neighbors already to where they couldn't get out when they're trying to come home after work on a Friday afternoon, they can't get to home because the streets are plugged. And so I remember that discussion quite well when we talked about occupancy, that was part of that discussion.
Okay.
Right?
Yes. Supervisor Humphrey, do you have anything at this juncture?
It's all been gone through, but I mean, you know, we can go over this a million times, but, and I think that's great that they made you park in the driveway. So is that something we're gonna put in the ordinance, that they gotta park in the driveway and can't park in the seat? You know, I mean, we can.
They do in Gilbert, Arizona.
Yeah, right, and so, I mean, we're getting complaints of being too stringent already, but I think that's why it goes to the occupancy level, is because if you have a lot of people, you're gonna have a lot of cars. So if we do have an occupancy level, it'll cut down on the cars that will accumulate in these rentals. And so, and as far as the, you know, I mean, if somebody has 5 rentals, that's still 5 inspections. You know, that's still 5 that you have to categorize and take care of. So, you know, that's just kind of where I'm at on those. So I'm good, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any more to present at this moment?
No.
Okay, so what I'd like to do then is we have several that wish to speak from the public on this matter. If it's all right, I'll start in Payson. We have Jean Zering. If you would, please come to the microphone. Good morning. Good morning.
There's a microphone here. Is all that's on. Can you hear him? Yes. Yeah. Hello? We can hear you.
Yeah, just speak up.
Yeah, I can speak up, but I want to make sure that it's working. Is this working? Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm here to, first of all, thank everybody for allowing myself to speak. I'm a resident of, Gila County, obviously. And, my concern is that we have a 40-acre community with 6 houses. So it's about 2.5, 3-acre parcels per home. Briefly, in 2008, my cabin was built, and I understood what it was like to live in the mountains up here and have enjoyment of all of that. Several years later, more homes are being built, and there's only 1 home out of these 6 that is short-term rental. So I'm just going to speak directly from my perspective of being a property owner, trying to enjoy my peace and quiet, my enjoyment. You guys have talked a lot about occupancy rates, and that's one of the concerns I have. This rental, there have been 6 vehicles at a time that come. So you got 12 adults, and then I get a head count of 20 to 25 kids that come out. Now, this house obviously is not big enough to house that many people with legal beds, if you're talking about people per bed. So what I saw was they would bring in their sleeping bags. Obviously, they're sleeping on the floor. But with that many people for a weekend, what that does is it disturbs my peace. Because now you have all those people that are making noise throughout the night, day. They bring their ATVs in, and because it's, again, small areas, double acres, are driving up and down easement roads, making a lot of noise. They also bring their pets, dogs. Gila County has an ordinance for dog leash laws, and when they have 3, 4 dogs that come with their families, then these dogs are in an unfamiliar location. They're still protecting their family, their loved ones. So when a homeowner is traveling to or from on the easement road, these dogs are barking. They're loose, never been attacked. But what I had to do was I had to construct a wall, or I should say a fence, all the way around my acreage properties. Because these people come up, their kids are not adult supervised. They come up from the valley, they come up to the cool mountain air, and all they want to do is explore and run around. I'm okay respect private property, my property. The dogs will run wherever they want to run because they're not on a leash. They do not have adult supervision watching these dogs. So with a combination of all of those lack of life reasons and the short-term rental people coming up, they don't care. You know, they come up for a relaxation, they come up to enjoy the cold air. And it's obvious because this has been going on since 2010. So today, I'm here to talk about the issues that need to be addressed in the ordinance. You have barking dogs, you have loose dogs, you have people that don't obey property lines. Everybody knows what your property line is. And if a short-term rental allows people to just do whatever they want when they come up, there's no regard for other people's rights, other property owner rights. So one of the things I'm wondering, and I guess I'm just going to sound off with this, I was in Sedona for the weekend, and I realized that they have an ordinance for noise pollution. And at 9 o'clock at night, you cannot be out on a deck of your short-term rental and make noise because you're disturbing the peace of others. I haven't heard anything about a noise curfew, and I believe that the ordinance has to address parties that make noise beyond the probably a reasonable level. A couple weeks ago, we were up at the cabin with our friends, and at 9 o'clock at night, the short-term rental was singing on their front deck. Couple acres, my house is over here, and we had to close our sliding glass door because we could hear people singing after 9 o'clock p.m. And the noise level, I shouldn't have to put up with that. I went outside to my garage where I made sure it was that house. Now we have the National Forest behind me. I have no neighbors to the east of me. I have no neighbors to the south of me, National Forest. You have a house right next to me on the west side, and that's where the noise is coming from. The other part is that in the end of May, I was on the phone with Tim and Freddie because earlier in January of 2024, I was on the phone with Supervisor Klein, and we were talking about this short-term rental agreement, and Supervisor Klein assured me that it probably would go into effect in May of 2024. However, when it did not, that's when I called Tim and Freddie because that's when 25, 30 people came up to this rental house, and when I was on the phone with
Chairman,
Freddie,
my apologies for interrupting. Sir, my apologies for interrupting.
Excuse me, hang on.
Chairman, are we limiting the public comments to 3 minutes today?
I was not planning on doing that, but I will recommend that we shorten it. During the call to the public, we normally do 3 minutes. And we have a lot of people that want to speak this morning. So I would like to encourage everyone to keep their comments very specific and pointed and short if possible. What community did you say you lived in?
I'm sorry, the sound system here in the basement is horrible.
Yeah.
I'm not really understanding what you're saying, and I don't know if you can hear me clearly.
Is there a way you can wrap it up?
Yeah, I'll wrap it up. I wish I knew roughly what it was. Okay. So I suppose, to wrap this up, if the Gila board, Gila supervisors will somehow create an ordinance that short-term rental people have to sign or notify all the families that are in the short-term rentals, if they would say in the list of requirements that renters cannot let dogs run loose, there's an ordinance. If the renters can hear that it is against Gila County ordinance to have barking dogs active, if in the board of supervisors in the list of what the renters have to do is that they cannot shoot guns within a quarter mile of any home occupied or not. They don't there has to be a noise ordinance. And then the second thing is there has to be a curfew of when the party stops. And it does not interfere with my sleep cycle or just the fact that I want to have my friends in my home. And I don't have to hear the noise, the TVs, the people laughing, singing.
Okay.
I wish, and I hope that you guys will allow that to happen. The other thing is the parking. What this homeowner does is that they have painted the forest and they allow the park.
This, excuse me, sir. Excuse me. Excuse me. I think you've made your point, and so supervisors can jump in at any time if they want to make a comment, but I'm going to have to keep the meeting moving. I appreciate your comments. We have the Mennerts, Mr. and Mrs. Mennerts from the Payson area. Please try and be brief and concise.
Yes, we're here for one reason, that's because of bad actors in the rental, short-term rental industry. And because of loopholes that we have, we're operating hotels in residential neighborhoods, which should never happen. There's a loophole that's happening, now we have to deal with it. So what do we do? I'd like to see something happen with the bad acting part of it. And really, it could all be regulated and controlled by the property management, number one. What this gentleman's talked about, we've been playing up with for 15 years. But the main thing is I like to have a solution to a problem. If these houses were ID number one, I've talked about this before, with this ID numbers for each rental property. And so with that, we can report to a website with the county. So the county would have record of when it happened, what's going on, and they can maintain that for each property. We also know also that what I'd like to see is, or what I would like to see is, the property manager is on tap 24/7 on that property, and we would be able to either call them, send a text message, or reach them real time, and they would deal with those problems real time. So we're not dealing with, and then we take the load off the sheriff's department. For one thing, we have a lot of friends that we don't need these guys going on with these little nuisance things. There's a lot of serious things going on. But if the property managers would police their property, and I'll tell you this, there are some good ones out there. There are some good ones that manage these things. The other thing goes back to occupancy. It's common sense, gentlemen. When we build a house, you guys require us, we have to look at all these things. What's a legal bedroom? How many people come in? Come on. 15, 20, 30 people, and I understand, we'll let them do what they want to do. There's a liability issue. But when we have tragedy, when there's a fire, something goes on there, 15 people are trying to scramble off with kids in the dark and there's smoke. We got our first responders coming in, and bad things happen. It's not good. Okay, who are they going to look to blame? Number one, the landowner, the homeowner, you're going to be sued no matter what, because you're responsible. But we need to look at what's common sense, guys. If you got a 3-bedroom home, you know generally there's 2 people in each bedroom, all right? It's a big bedroom, maybe there's one more, but we've got, like up by us, they'll take a den, they'll take any big room, and they'll line it up with beds, and they're cramming people in. The other thing is down from us, there's another individual down there that just a few weeks ago, now they come in, there was probably 20 cars on that property, and they have like 2-acre and 1-acre parcels out there. They had tents set up. There was 10 tents, so they brought all their friends. They were set up, and this one here has a bad actor for management. Number one, but we see this over and over. But we need to control that occupancy. That solves a lot of the problem.
Okay.
Control the occupancy. Now you don't have the parking. You don't have as much noise. A lot of that. Then this gentleman speaks to the dog. We've seen it. But we have them shooting 22s right in the neighborhood, shooting cans of neighbors down the hill. That's what, that you can't stop stupidity. You can't, and the county doesn't have time, or we don't have the resources to, you can have code enforcers. We can't do that either. So who's going to be able to do this real time and control the problem? The property manager, if you can contact them, and then what you guys do as property managers, you get a good contract in place, you tell them, I'm calling you once, you fly it down right now. Twice, you're out of it.
Okay, I think we got the message. Thank you. I think we got the message. Mrs. Mennerts, are you gonna add to that?
I filled out a sheet too. So first of all, I want to thank all of you for all the work you've put into getting an ordinance together. I would really like to be able to see it be enforced. Randy and Kim have been awesome. They tell us both sides of the story. Supervisor Klein tells us both sides of the story. We understand. But at the same time, it kind of sort of feels at times like we, the homeowners, are the ones who are being discriminated against because we have to follow all of the ordinances that the county has. But with the short-term rentals, you give them an inch, they take a mile. And that's what we see time and time again. Now, we have to stay to occupancy. But now we're gonna say, we as permanent full-time residents, who are Gila County taxpayers, now our quiet, our solitude is disrupted because we're gonna let the corporations and the businesses that turn private residents into money-making places change our entire environment. And so this is an issue, and it's the occupancy. Many times, we have no water at our home because we have all of these houses filled with people that are using our resources. Our landfills are filling up. Our gravel road gets graded once in a while, and then all of the rentals come up and potholes.
Okay.
So there's a lot of issues. I really appreciate your efforts in getting it done, and I really hope you will consider the homeowners and not just giving the business people that are coming into our neighborhoods all of the advantages. Please think of us. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your help.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. Frank Church. Please be brief.
I won't take a lot of time. I just want to reiterate some of the other points that people brought up. Number one, we need the number of the homeowner, a phone number posted where we can make a call, like it was said, in real time. There's 3 burglaries within 200 yards of my house, and there's no phone numbers posted whatsoever. I had the sheriff, so I called him and basically got a hand. Dogs. Every time somebody comes up, brings their dogs, they just turn them loose. And they come over into my yard. They do whatever, they do their business. And I want their owners to stop pick up after them. I had this happen a couple of weeks ago. First time I cleaned it up. The second time, I returned it to the owners on ceremonies. Now, that sets up complications, like really, not like and all road maintenance and the dirt bikes, they are the most annoying things that people can do. They come up and they go up and down the road and very fast, raising dust, making noise. And again, that's another confrontation. I confronted one young man. He said, I'm in national board, I can do whatever I want to do. So that's the attitude people have when they come up. And that's what needs to change. Things that need to be enforced.
Thank you. Here, we don't have anybody on the internet, do we? Oh, thank God. Adam Baugh.
I feel like brevity will help me out today, so I'll try my best to be brief. First of all, I work with cities all across the valley. I'm only here on behalf of myself, but I've collaborated with a lot of jurisdictions as they've adopted ordinances. I'm very grateful for the consideration they've put into this effort. My only request would have been, I wish I could have participated part of it because I didn't get to read it for the first time until yesterday when it got released. And in the 4 months, probably could have worked together and made this a very, very fast meeting. for what it is, there's a couple of things I want to say. One, thank you for recognizing the impossibility of identifying a sex offender, because all I get is a name. I don't know their birth date, social security number, or where they're from. I could not do that. So thank you for recognizing that. Number two, the change into the 4-hour response time is very appreciative. I'm thankful for that. It's an hour and a half for me to come up, and then I want to respond. I will respond. 4 hours gives me the grace to respond properly. A couple of things that stand out to me, and I think would be helpful to understand and appreciate. Number one, I agree with you, Supervisor Klein, about the penalties. The penalties it's a stick that makes you comply. But I think there should be a warning before you just jump to the $500. And I think that's what was missing from this. I don't disagree about the first penalty fee, the second or third, but I think a generous or the courtesy of a warning the first time would probably be the first step. Sometimes we need to understand better before we fully can appreciate the necessity of it. The
And
second,
so, Adam, hang on right there a minute. So you referred to that when you were at the podium, Josh. You know, we don't just run in there the first thing with a big stick and slap penalties on people or anything like that. Matter of fact, I think, I don't remember if you or Randy or who it was I was talking to, but there is kind of a grace period in this anyway, correct?
no, there's not.
I guess the first thing is, staff does not issue these fines. These
Okay.
are going to a hearing officer or the courts. So you've been told before you show up at court why you're going there and what has happened. So this is not Randy decided Adam needed a $1,000 fine. This is Randy has talked to them, told them, hey, you got an issue. They ignored us. We send them to hearing officer, and the hearing officer issues the fine.
But, okay, so right there, but what do you mean by ignored you? Like if you told them we have an issue with this certain problem and then they just failed to correct
They didn't
it?
respond to us, we have people,
That's not how it's written, that's all.
we have people do it all the time. They just
So-
ignore us and
so-
don't want to correct it, don't think it needs to be corrected. And so at some point we issue an NOV or however this will go forward. And they'll go to a hearing officer and they'll explain to the hearing officer why they don't think it needs to be corrected or how
Okay,
it's dealt with.
so like to Adam's point, is there some way, because I believe everybody needs a chance to correct whatever it is they did wrong. Some people may just stub their toe and do it not even knowing that they did it. So, you know, that's where I'm coming from. I think that folks, whether it's 30 days, 60 days, whatever it is, within reason, has a chance to correct that. That's something that I would like to see. After that, no. Send them to the hearing officer, but.
I was just going to respond, and and we've worked with you before on this, Supervisor Klein, with barking dog complaints or dogs at large, where we will go ahead and put the NOV or whatever, but if they work with us in between that time, we let the hearing officer know that this has been taken care of and there is no fine or anything in between that period. So just because we do that and it goes to the hearing officer, there have been numerous cases where someone decides to work with us in between that time period, and we let the hearing officer know, that everything's been taken care of on our side.
Is there a way of adding something like that in this ordinance that would give us a chance to calm some fears, let's just say? Jessica?
Yes, Chairman, we can still modify the ordinance. Today is just a work session. There will be an action item to adopt the modifications, but we're still in the drafting, or I should say revising phase. So yes, we could add that in there
Just throwing it out there.
if the board would like staff to work on that.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Adam.
The only thing I know is just the language in the ordinance. So it's come from me to hear that there's, I think, a willingness to work together, but that's just not what the language says. So in 3.8, when you issue a violation of A, $500, that's a good spot to insert an opportunity to maybe, upon notice, cure a defect before you jump right to the 500. So if that's the understanding, let's just write it into the narrative. That's all.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chair, speed limit's 65 miles an hour. The officer doesn't stop you and say, this is your first warning, you get 3 more warnings before you get a ticket. If you're doing 65 miles an hour, you get a ticket.
Well, I guess if staff makes the comment, I think it's better to have the comment written into the record so it's not So we
Well, yeah,
removed
but
the arbitrary.
but the state of
subjectivity.
Arizona doesn't offer that in their records over a citation from a DPS officer. You have to have rules, and you have to have limits, and people have to understand those limits. And if they work with it and understand, cool. I mean, he was on the way to the hospital, the officer let him off. That's between the officer and what he turns in as far as the ticket goes. Same as this, if you're in violation, it's up to the hearing officer, not me, not Supervisor Klein, not Supervisor Christensen, of the penalty of the violation. That's up to a subcontracted hearing officer that is subcontracted to Gila County for hearing violations within Gila County.
I don't disagree. It's just different from what your staff just said. So if your staff's going to say that, why don't we have the ordinance reflect what they say? That's all.
I don't care to argue anymore, Mr. Chair, thank you.
So I guess as I move forward to some of these points, I've owned my property. It's been vacation rental for 5 years. I just pumped my septic for the very first time, which is a normal, actually, rhythm of pumping and cleaning your septic. And I'm one of those properties that has many guests, but on the weekend, not during the week. And so when I think through like the necessity of solid waste, I can still be a place that is an example of a good operator with many people and still only pumping at the same rhythm and pace as a full-time resident. There's a part in the ordinance that I think needs to be addressed a little bit further, and it's the violation exists when there's an emergency, a call for emergency response. Here's some scenarios that I don't think should result in a violation, but could result in emergency response. I think it was referred to an example of a stroke. Locked out. In my case, my nephew was at our property and practicing with his whip in the front yard, and my neighbor, besides pulling out a rifle and a flak jacket, called the sheriff for an 8-year-old boy playing with a whip. Sometimes he's called on me for using my yard blower. So each of those instances, when he calls, results in the police responding. Now it becomes the emergency event because that's the way your code's written. I don't think that's what it's intended to say, but I only know how to work with the 4 corners of this page. So that's in there. So I think we have to understand that it says at any time, and there needs to be better discretion for the responding person to recognize if this really is an emergency event that then results in these fees or not. For example, one of the things that concerns me is how do I say this? The response in person. I thought I heard Mr. Plummer say that the responding officer could maybe call that person and tell them, you don't need to come. I would love that personally, but that's not what your code says. Your code says you have to respond in person. So I would love to remove the arbitrariness so I know precisely how I'm going to follow the rules. Because if I don't know that, I feel like I'm going to be back in this position again. I'm grateful for the mercy and the grace that these folks will extend. I just want to have clarity on my end so I can protect myself and also be a really, really good operator. I'll end my time. I'll just say that I'm one of those properties you pointed in your packet. So it's 4 bedrooms and 16 bathrooms. I'm actually a 7-bedroom house. I just don't advertise it as a 7-bedroom because at some point I'd be priced out of the market. And the ability for someone to get 16 is they would have to add on the extra bedroom. So not everybody, what you see on the ad is exactly what you think it is. And my property is validly permitted with for the occupancy that it has. So I would encourage, if it's possible, that on the next round, whatever direction you provide to staff, maybe add one more suggestion that they work with Bob and I on the next version of draft. Because I think by the time it comes next year, I hope it's a consent item agenda because everyone's kind of found some harmony here. And I think I can collectively help move this better in a spot and more importantly, understand the positions they're coming from to help communicate that to the rest of our group to chill out a little bit. So thank you for your time. I'm only speaking on behalf of myself, but I know there's a lot of folks who look to me and I just want to be able to be a helpful communicator across both sides of the aisle. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Josh?
So I wanted to address something Supervisor Klein said earlier that I think will help the board members as we listen to the rest of the comments. And that's, one of the things that we saw in the way the State Attorney General ruled this is that, and this is for those opposed and against, is that, if we make rules in the ordinance they have to be grounded in some kind of public health or public safety theory. That is the things that allow it. So, as much as some of these things, like they had mentioned, we've got some complaints about lighting and too much light pollution, barking dogs and dogs at loose, which are already part of the animal control ordinances, issues with parking, which aren't a public health thing, but I can't, And then I was thinking, just so the board's aware, part of the reason I went where I would with occupancy is because if I'm going to use any kind of public health authority to have any kind of occupancy limit, then I have to have something that's grounded in some sort of evidence base, which is what we get from ADEQ when we look at how we evaluate rooms per bedroom occupancy for a cesspool or wastewater system for those occupancy limits. So my concern, and something I'd like for the board to think about as we hear the rest of the comments, is that I think it'd be difficult for me to say, I can recommend for the same reason Supervisor Klein, since becoming the health officer, and we had the Houston Mesa Creek spill up there. We've seen I'm working on the Arizona WIFA wastewater thing to look at the cesspool replacements. We know there's over 7,500 cesspools in the county. So as a health officer, regardless of my feelings or anything, I know that, and we had the presentation where, 75% of our water in Gila County is groundwater that comes from surface waters. So as I look to what I can do with that authority and applying that to an ordinance, I think that, and maybe Jessica would have more to say, but I feel like that occupancy of 2 or more, or 2 people per bedroom, would be the limit to where I could go. So I feel like if I didn't have that, I think that you'd be correct that I think I wouldn't be able to have a limit, because if I put it to a limit that I could justify through the public health code and through my nuisance ordinance, I think it would be that too. So I guess my recommendation would be to really think about whether you want to hold to that authority for the evidence that I have, or whether we just remove that, because adding any different occupancy, I don't know how I would get there with what I have available and declare that would be an evidence-based number that I would give if I said it was 3 or 4 or anything else, if that makes sense. I just wanted to throw that out there as we're going towards redrafting, that 2 number I can use, because ADEQ allows that, and it gives me that to refer to and say that's why I make it 2. Outside of that, anything above that, I don't think through my statutes or anything that I would have any evidence to say 3, 4, 5, 6. I think that then we would be looking at, let's remove that occupancy limit and not put that in there. That would make sense.
So what you're saying, Josh, that would go against the Attorney General's
I would think it.
response? Is that, I guess what I'm asking, we can't just come up with an arbitrary number, Jessica?
Chairman, just to clarify, the Attorney General's response is just a response. It's not a binding decision as if it were a court decision. It's basically the Attorney General's office looking at everything, saying, in our opinion, this is what we feel the law is, and it hasn't reached the courts yet. So I just wanted to clarify that point. As far as the limit, I believe what Josh is saying is that he could not give a recommendation to have the occupancy be beyond the number 2. Is that correct? Two people per bedroom. So I believe what he's saying is he's not comfortable making that recommendation to the board, because it's not within the research that he's done to say, yeah, okay, you can have 3 people in each bedroom. He's saying it goes against his research to have more people in there. So what his recommendation is, let's go ahead and just strike it altogether, because we're not in the position to say we're going to allow you to have 3 people per room.
Wow, Josh. Can't you dig in another bag of tricks and see what you got?
I try to take it very seriously that, that they give public health this ability to do that. And I would be making up numbers for the board to do that.
You stay there, man. Say if we struck the occupancy number, okay, like I said to begin with, that was fine with me. But there's other issues associated with those numbers, whether it's parking, whether it's water quality in these areas that are on these creeks, whether it's traffic, there's these other factors along with that as well. It's not just a matter of overloading a septic system or whatever. And so I think that's the hang up with me, Jessica. Like Adam said, if he puts 16 people in a 4-bedroom house, It's his house. But if he was doing that and plugging up the streets and tearing up the neighborhood roads and everything else, that's not cool. But that does, in a big sense, goes back to those property owners. It goes back to Adam, to where the neighbors should be knocking on his door and saying, enough, dude. You know? The problem is we have people that don't respect that as well either. You know, Adam he can put his thumb on it and restrict it and tighten it up, but there's other people that may just blow you off or end up in a fight in the yard. So, you know, that's the issue we have when it comes to numbers, occupancy. It's my 2 cents worth.
Okay. Any more? Thank you. Robert Turner.
Hello.
Hi.
I'd like to also thank the board for giving us this opportunity again to go over this and for the work that you guys have done and change some of the things that we thought would be good changes. I want to touch, and I'm not picking on somebody because they sound like they're against STRs, but I think I don't know if they've read this ordinance, and there's things in this ordinance that we've all agreed on, that we go and we tell our neighbor, hey, we're going to have STR, this is our contact information, and they're going to be provided with that. And they will be able to contact the owners, and I think that's a very important thing. One of the questions I had, and hasn't been covered yet, have we ever determined how many STRs there are in unincorporated Gila County?
Officially, no.
Okay.
We've contacted third-party vendors, and they've given us rough numbers, but they kind of vary all over the place. So we're basing it on the lower number. When we came up with the dollar amount, we're basing it on the lower number.
What's that number?
I have that on me. I think it's 800, but don't quote me on anything about that.
The reason I asked that is because we had talked about in the first work session about determining that to determine what the fee would be for the application. I think that I agree with the occupancy issue. I think that that is a big topic here, and I know there's concerns about parking and everything like that, but we have to remember with occupancy and a lot of these rules and everything, we still have to apply it equally to a private residence, a long-term rental, and everything else. I know the AG's office says that you can have this ordinance for health and safety, but those health and safety laws still occur to those other type of properties. So it still has to be treated fairly across the board. One of the other things I wanted to ask or talk to you about was the application and what's required in that. And I'm assuming the county is eventually going to send out an application, a standardized thing to fill out and everything. I would also think it would be a good idea because the ordinance wants us to post the rules and everything, or the basis of the ordinance on each door and everything. And I think that should be provided to every owner, included in the $225. And then that way we can make photocopies, laminate it, and put it up. As far as, and I'm not picking on the STR, the people that don't like this stuff. Also, I wanted to talk about the dogs and the noise and et cetera. I still have not been able to find any type of Gila County noise ordinance or party ordinance or anything like that. And I think that's an important thing that Gila County adopts that. Then that way, when a police officer gets called for a loud party, they have ground to stand on. And if they don't have an ordinance, the people can just say, have a good night, we're out of here. And I think that would be a good thing for the county to adopt. And then it's for everybody. So if this gentleman's neighbor is not an STR, he can still complain about it. Because every neighborhood has problems, whether it be barking dogs or whether it be loud noises, people riding ATVs, you know. But a thing that we have to remember too is all those are, and I, being a retired law enforcement person, I don't want to be burdened with little stuff like that when there's better things to be done, but it still is a law enforcement type of deal. They still have to, if the neighbor's having a problem with dogs running on their property or people trespassing, they've got to call the sheriff's department. Because if they go, they can try to deal with themselves, but then they could be putting themselves in jeopardy of getting hurt. Been a lot talked about. I agreed with Adam as far as the the emergency response, you know, at the discretion of law enforcement, if they need to get a hold of you, or the fire department, if they need to get a hold of the owner, you know, that 4-hour thing there. Let me just check a couple notes, make sure I got everything. I was happy, and I appreciate the sex offender, you know, putting that on the back of the owner if they wanted to do that or not. And then one of the comments Supervisor Humphrey made, I just want to, there was a lot of rumbling when you said inspection, and I think you were referring to the actual application process. You know, getting the permit. It wasn't that you were saying they're going to go out and do an inspection. And a lot of people, I think, just kind of misunderstood what he was talking about. I think that's it. I think that's it for now. If I have anything else, I'll raise my hand.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Kelly Parks.
All right, so Chairman, thank you so much. Board of Supervisors, appreciate your time. First of all, I just want to say thank you for reconsidering the ordinance and the work sessions that you've had. So that shows that you are actually trying to listen to the people, and I really, really appreciate that. Also today, just seeing that you're listening and considering different options of changes that are even still on the books to try to vote on that. So I appreciate that. What was a little disappointing just now was just finding out that gathering the data for the Airbnbs, like how many there are in Gila County, I think is such important information for Gila County to know before you're going to vote on an ordinance. It's important, like how many are there? There's a phone call, just make a phone call to the corporation Airbnb. But I wanted to share some information because I didn't want to cover what everyone else is going to cover today. And this is something that I wanted to be on the public record because and this is data from Airbnb, okay? They say that 90% of Airbnb owners have one home, okay? So there's a narrative that's out there that says, you know, the corporations and the investors are coming and buying up homes in Gila County, and they're taking up all this housing. So what's actually happening from Airbnb, they would know this is their business. Less than 1% of housing stock in Gila County is Airbnb. Less than 1%. So the Airbnb people, owners, are not causing housing crisis in Gila County. That is not happening based on the numbers. And this narrative is being repeated over and over and over again. And so I'm here to correct the record. This is from Airbnb. You can call them yourself. I would say Bidenomics is causing the housing crisis. All right, that is a problem which you can't solve, but you know, it is what it is. You guys are spending a lot of money on Discover Gila County, which is awesome. We appreciate it because you're bringing tourism to the county. You're bringing economy. You're building the economy, bringing jobs. So all these things are great. But, and then as short-term rental owners, we feel like we're being punished. You know, we're lodging the tourism, yet we're being punished in some ways. So this is why I do appreciate all the considerations, all of the reconsiderations that you're making. It does make a difference, and I do appreciate that. So those are all my comments. Thank you so much.
Hang on a minute,
Okay.
if I may.
Sure.
Kelly?
Sure.
So we don't know the exact amount of short-term rentals. I believe, like you said, you can go through Airbnb, VRBO, and start getting some numbers.
Yes.
But my question is what's the percentage of people that rent their places without going through a platform? There's always that angle. The other thing I would say is that I've never once said that well, to back up a little bit, I just recently, yesterday, had a meeting with the sheriff's office. Deputies cannot find places like in Payson to rent, to live. You know, they cannot do that. You know, not on their wages, at least. You know, when I look around in Young, where we're both from,
Yeah.
very, very few long-term rentals. Very few. When I look at these other places, it seems to be the same thing. That's fine. If people want to have the short-term rentals and everything, I'm not opposed to short-term rentals. Never have been opposed to short-term rentals. And to solve a housing crisis is more than us as a county would ever be expected to do. We can't do that. We're not going to solve it. You know, it's going to run its course. And so I think for sure that when you mention corporations buying up homes, there are corporations buying up homes. Scattered about. They're not all in one neighborhood or one city, not even all in one state. But there are corporations that do look for those opportunities. It's a money-making proposition. You know, you buy the place, you rent it, you want out of it, you sell it, and you make a few more dollars off the property you just sold because of the current market. And so it's a no-brainer. I mean, that's where they need to be if they're going to make money. So there's a lot of different aspects to the short-term rentals that nobody here in this room really knows yet. That's the way I see it. And I also think that by going with an ordinance like this, and we do start licensing short-term rentals, we're going to start building that base on actually how many there are out there. It may take 3 years to get it done, but pretty soon we're going to know or have a better number of knowing what's out there. See, we're not going to have anything to do with like the town of Payson. They have their own short-term rentals ordinance. They do their own things. This is for unincorporated areas. It's not just county-wide, corner to corner. And so when it comes to the towns like Payson, Globe, Winkleman, Hayden, some of these areas like that, they have their own process, their own ordinances that they work with. Now, we can work with that and get better numbers, but it's going to take a while to get the numbers down. It really is. When Randy throws out a number like 800 or whatever, that's even less than what originally I thought. I thought it was 1,000, north of 1,000. But who knows? You know, we don't.
Would you like me to tell you how many? I'm a community leader for Airbnb. You don't have to wait 3 years. I could let you know. I know you're going to third-party, you know, people to get your data. And I was just thinking, let's cut to the chase. Let's get the real numbers
So you're
here right now.
So Airbnb, you've got numbers on Airbnb, right?
I don't have them right now, but
No,
I do
that's okay.
know
That's okay.
I am in communication. I'm an owner, and they will give me that information.
But
I'm just okay.
But what I'm saying is that's Airbnb.
Right.
That's not VRBO. That's not private rentals. You know, a lot of people get hung up on, you know, Airbnb, VRBO, which I think, Bob, you guys go through that, don't you, a platform? A lot of people do, and I see the reason why they do it. I get that, but there is a lot of them that do not. They do their own deal. And most of them, I will say, are the ones that live right there close to their rentals. They're right there in the same neighborhoods. But anyway, I'm sure these guys would like to know numbers eventually. Here comes Michael right behind you, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you. Just for this conversation, and I know Randy said 800. I think he forgot since the last meeting. We did, contact a third-party company that cuts across all platforms. At one point in time, there's 1,000, 1,100 possible STRs being talked about and discussed. Those are listings. So the third-party company that we discussed this with and got the data from said those are listings. You have multiple listings. You can have one home that's on VRBO and one home that's on Airbnb. So the 1,100, that home would count as 2. The real number is close to 500 in unincorporated Gila County. That's what we based the permit fee $225 or $250 on, so it is around 500. Individual VRBOs, Airbnbs, Facebook, it cuts across all the platforms that you list the short-term rentals on.
Thank you, Michael.
you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, most of us do Airbnb verbal. I mean, I haven't met very many people that don't do both, you know, so that's why it'd be that low number. But, I mean, I don't really know, just curious in Young specifically, I mean, how many jobs are there available for people to come to Young to want to get a rental, you know? And so I'd have that kind of question, like,
Sure.
because I don't think there's a lot of jobs available in Young for rentals to want to come to Young. So what they do come to Young for is short-term rentals because they're trying to get out of the valley, and you know, you live there.
Yeah.
So, but no, I really, really honestly do appreciate all of the time that you've spent and the administration. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Parks. So we have, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I do have one more thing to say. It would be brief.
Well, come up, please come up.
We had talked about this at the last work section. I know I talked to you two gentlemen about it the other day. There was the conversation over the teepee, and there's a gal that has the teepee in Young, and there's a couple of people that have the tough shed type of mini building. And Mr. O'Driscoll and Mr. Plummer said that they were going to take that into consideration to look into that and see if they could come up with something, you know, to cover those to make them still be rentable. The only thing I could find in the ordinance still is that it has to be a permanent structure. Are we going to address that still?
So in talking with supervisors, it still does have to be a permitted structure. They can work on getting the TP permitted, and there's gonna be some hoops to jump through to get to that, but they can get that TP permitted. They can, Tough Shed says they don't want any of their products used for living in. They have one that's designed, it's a 2-story, that's designed for residential. That's what they want people to live in. They really don't want them in the utility shed, which is the U occupancy. And so they still have to be permitted structures, but they can get there. Just got to go through some process to get there to make sure it meets code and egress and emergency response stuff.
So if let's take, for instance, Janine that has a TB, she needs to get with you guys to find out what she needs to do that.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, backing up just for clarity, the comment was made that Airbnbs are not, they're responsible for the housing shortage in Gila County. I don't know that they've ever been said to be responsible for the shortage of housing in Gila County. I think at our last meeting, I believe it was maybe Sedona, to where a board passed that if you have a job, you can live in the park in your car because of the shortage of housing. I never said that Airbnbs were responsible for shortage of housing in Gila County. But there are communities where it has caused a major issue, and I would not like to see that in Gila County, but I'm not blaming it for Gila County. Thank you.
Yes, we have been accused, the board has been accused, because I've heard it, that the only reason we're doing this is to eliminate STRs and go back to long-term rentals. And that's not my motivation at all. I don't believe it's the board's motivation at all. My concern from the beginning has always been those that live in the neighborhoods that are impacted negatively over this, this type of business that's in the neighborhood. And that's really my only motivation. So we have Vince and Cindy Hudson with us from Pine. You both want to speak? One speak? Okay, please come up, Cindy.
First of all, yes, I want to thank you all for being gracious in listening to we the people, because we do deserve a say. I want to remind you that short-term rental owners are also property owners. I've heard a lot of talk about the property owners being affected negatively. And yes, there are some bad apples out there, and they need to be curtailed. And hopefully, getting this ordinance right will do that. But please, when we get this ordinance right, let's remember that we are also property owners. And I would hope that we would have equal consideration, not just listen to the ones that are loud and boisterous. And which I've been there myself at times, okay? So the main thing I want to talk about though is this fee per listing, okay? Let me give you an example. Our short-term rental is one building, one house that has 4 separate units in it. They all have a separate entrance. They all are a bedroom and a bath. We house 2 people in those units. Okay, according to this, fee per listing, we would have to pay this fee 4 times. Now, I list on Airbnb, and I list on Vrbo, and I list on Google. And I think all of us short-term renters don't only list on one platform. You know, that's economics. You get your name out there. So now, not only do I have to pay 4 fees, you have to times that by 3 because I have listings on all 3 sites. So that's 12. So now, according to the language in this document, I would have to pay 12 fees. It makes more sense to me to have you pay the fee per building. I mean, if someone has a short-term rental, you know.
So Cindy, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I brought that up a while ago. So you and Vince personally, do you have a fear that if for some reason something went awry in one of your rooms in your house that you would be shut down for the whole deal till it was figured out?
The way this is written, that would happen. The way the ordinance is written. So I'm just saying,
Well,
like Adam said, you know, let's get things clarified in writing.
That's the difference though. If you paid separately for every room that you rented out, or if you paid separately for every room rented out and you had an issue with one instance, whatever that may be, I don't know. I'm just using it as an example. That one would be shut down, but you'd still be able to operate the other ones. That's the difference. If you had it all under one fee for $225, you operate like you've been doing, and you had an instance in there, then you would basically be shut down until it was all resolved. Does that worry you?
No, because I am a responsible owner.
There you
I live
go.
on the
Thank you.
property. I do things right.
No, that's what I was getting
So
at.
should I be penalized to have to pay 12 fees because I'm doing things right?
You got 12 rooms in there?
No, I just said there's 4 rooms.
Mr. Chair, I believe that the deputy county manager is standing behind you to respond to your persistence on 12 fees.
Yeah, so just for clarification, so if you have a home and you have 4 bedrooms in a home, 3 bedrooms in a home, if you list each home individually in VRBO, in Airbnb, that's an individual permit, so that would be 4 permits. It's not based on the number of listings across the platforms. It wouldn't be you have 3 bedrooms and you're advertising them on 4 different platforms, so 12 fees. It is the individual rooms. If you're renting them separately as separate businesses, each one requires a permit. I hope
Okay,
that
so for
helps.
clarification, if the Hudsons said, we have availability, this is the price, they would pay 1 fee and then they would fill the 4 rooms. But if they alternatively said, oh, we have the Renaissance room, or we have the Hunter room, or we have the wedding venue room, or whatever, those become separate then, as separate listings.
That is correct. If you're listing each individual room separately as an individual business on Airbnb or VRBO, then they would be considered individual permitted short-term rentals. But if you have a 3-bedroom home and you're renting and you're just listing it as one house, 1 permit.
Okay, and you can rent that up to 3 times.
Yeah.
Does that help you understand where we're at, where
No.
you're at?
Thank you, Michael.
I have one house.
Yeah.
It has 4 separate bedrooms that are individual units. Okay?
Correct.
It's not not a house with 4 bedroom where there's, everybody has the whole house. You can rent this, you can rent room A, B, C, D.
Okay.
Separately, not together. There's
Yeah,
just
I
a
think
bed
we
and a
understand
bath.
that. So
There's no kitchen.
what
it's not-
Michael is saying that is if you do not list A, B, C, and D separately, but you have someone called, you have availability, I can put you in unit C.
Mhm.
That's one listing, not 4. But if you start turning those 4 bedrooms into a separate business function, listed separately because of their uniqueness, then you're subject to 4 rentals.
It's one business. It's Beeline Guest
Yeah.
House. I have Suite A, I
Okay,
have Suite B.
Mr. Chair,
and
if I
Suite D.
may, if you have a mall and you have 4 different stores in that mall, do you think each one of those stores should have a permit, or do you think that covers all of them?
I think in this case, the inspector will come out to one building and inspect because it's one utility system. It's one, heating and cooling. It's one water. It's one septic. They're connected. It's one building. They're all connected. They're not 4 separate little buildings. That should be one permit. I mean, if we're talking about the effective use of the money that we're paying, and we have to cover the costs that the county is going to incur sending someone out to inspect or to even set up for the initial permit, that should be one fee, not per listing. I do list them as the Ponderosa room, as the Pine room, as the Oak room. They're listed separately, but they're all one building. They're all one short-term rental.
One fee per structure would cover it.
One fee per structure is perfect.
Okay.
1 fee per building, 1 fee for structure.
All right. I think we understand your concern. Is that all?
Okay. I just want to reiterate that when I spoke to you about this, you said, no, that would be 1 fee. So my response was, that's not what's in writing. And I agree, like with Adam, it should spell out what staff is saying should be spelled out. And it should spell out 1 fee per structure, not 1 fee per listing
Okay.
to remedy it.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Mr. Turner, number 3.
Sorry, if I remember correctly, at the last work
Come
session,
on
we
up
all
to the-
talked, at the last work section, we all talked about, and I think we all pretty much agreed, was 1 permit per parcel. So like there's a gal in Young, and she has 2 small cabins, she would pay 1 permit per parcel. And I think we're all kind of agreeing on that last time.
Well, we discussed it. I'm not sure we agreed yet, so.
Well, that's what.
Yeah, we did discuss it. I have another person here, Verla. Doctor, is it? Yes, come on up. You're in Eastfordy Park, if I remember.
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
I have an addition I want you to add. I think you need to have in there, what's the fee for somebody who reports a false violation? We have a guy in our neighborhood right now, and he has mental issues anyway, but he's going to be reporting everybody for everything. And there's going to be many, many false violations he's going to report. I think you need in there that there's a fine for making a false violation report. That would be fair to us, because we should not be harassed. And he is harassing us to the point that my husband and I just picked up a restraining order against him. So that needs to be added. The other thing, you guys need clarification in this, because when you say bug spraying, what does that mean? Does that mean I have to have a professional company? How many times a month, a year, do I have to spray for bugs? You don't clarify. And that I feel like that needs clarification, or we don't know if we're doing it right or not doing it right. Parking in the streets, and boy, I agree with you guys. Some of our streets are way, way too narrow to be parked on. East Verde Estates is one of them. Nobody should be parking in our streets. There should be no parking signs everywhere. But my renter his car isn't gonna take up any more room than my neighbor's car. So if my renter's car is blocking the street, so is the next door, the owner's car blocking the street. So I just think, yes, we need rules, we need regulations, but they need to be universal. If I'm spraying for bugs, because that's a health concern, everybody in my neighborhood should have to spray for bugs. If you have a health concern that my septic may run over because I have 4 people in the house, what if my neighbor's got 8 and his septic runs over? His septic didn't cause a health problem. So I think you guys need to look at this and say, we need to make the laws universal. We all need to care. Airbnb people and owners need to care. Owners need to care. Your dog's barking, if you're an owner, it's okay, but if a renter comes in and their dog barks, it's not okay. Where do we draw the line here?
That's what we're trying to figure out. Thanks,
Well,
Brenda.
Yeah, and
think
I
everything-
believe Michael has some responses to perhaps a couple of your comments.
I could address the complaint. That's what government does best, is not a lot of neighbors get along, even though we all like to think we get along. So we are complaint-based, and there are many complaints we go on that are false.
Mm-hmm.
They're called in inappropriately, whatever you want to call it. They're not valid is what we call it. But we go out and investigate all of them. It doesn't matter.
But
and
you
we
need to
document
nip it in the bud
but-
here.
But that's sort of, that's a very difficult thing to ask because we go out and investigate. We're required by law to go investigate these things. So, and then we document what is valid, what's not. So we'll have a
But
document
it's
trail.
harassment on us. If you
If-
have somebody who's doing
I
this
get it, and that-
continuous and it's illegitimate.
I get it, and we'll have the documentation, and then if it rises to the level where you believe it's harassment, then it's a civil issue between the homeowners. And then we would have the documentation, how many times you've been there and all this.
I
that
think
could
you
do,
would
so
curtail a lot of this by having it as part of the law, part of
I
this.
appreciate it.
And I
Mr.
think it
Chair,
would be
Michael,
respectful
and
to
Mr.
us.
Chair, if I may, is on bugs, you know, I mean, your own home is yours, whether you have cockroaches or whatever. That's up to you. But I don't know if you've ever seen or had bed bugs, and that's transmitted by people. And people stay at a place one time and then they stay at a place another time. I would think to have some kind of bug prevention for bed bugs and things of that, I think it is important, because if I was gonna rent someplace and you do no spraying, I would be very concerned on who stayed there last weekend.
Well,
And so
I
if
spray, but
you
I
don't wanna spray,
Oh, no,
then,
I
you know.
spray. I
But,
spray.
but what I'm saying is
But you
that
don't
could be
have
a comfort
guidelines.
as well as a burden.
I spray monthly, but, and it's a professional, but I'm saying you don't have a guideline here. You just throw it out and say bug spray. And I've done my Airbnb for 10 years, I've never had a bed bug in any of them. So there's
That-
cleanliness issues, yes.
Mr. Chair, if I may, that's fine. I mean, if there's gotta be a health regulation for, I know you don't like to be compared to motels, but where people stay multiple times, multiple people, there has to be some kind of regulation on what kind of chemicals should be used to prevent transporting things as bed bugs and things, lice,
So then you're
and
saying it
things
has
of
to
that
be a
nature.
professional company? So you're controlling the chemicals?
No, but I'm just saying there might be a state regulation where, like motels are spraying so that they don't have lice and bed bugs and things in their rooms. Because you don't know the people that rent your place last weekend, next weekend, a year from now.
So you're
You
saying
don't
after
know
every rental we
what they
get
may be
sprayed?
carrying.
After every rental we get sprayed?
I said we'll look at the health department issue of that, of how to combat those kinds of transfers of those kind of bugs. as far as bug spray goes, then there would be a better regulation on what would be expected for them. But yeah,
As a fact, if we're listing on Airbnb and VRBO, if they get contacted from anybody that they arrived at a home and there were bed bugs, they take us off the platform. We're not on. We're done. So
I would just soon
that
know
would
that
be
your
your-
rooms are sprayed so I don't get lice and bed bugs than a sex offender, because nobody's gonna offend me that way, but the bugs would.
But another thing, I did call Airbnb about the sex offender because I wanted to know, what are you checking? Are you gonna tell me as an owner that this person's a sex offender? And they told me, absolutely not. Because there's federal privacy laws about disclosing this. And
Okay, well,
even
yeah.
if they find out it's a sex offender, Airbnb's not gonna report it. Because that's a violation of that person's privacy. They said so they're not gonna help us here. They aren't gonna tell us. They said it's a violation of privacy.
Thank you, Verla. Some things are implied. You're gonna have a clean place, you're gonna have bug-free place, you're gonna have clean water. Those are all implied. So I think it would be inappropriate to try and nail down exactly what the ordinance should say about the cleanliness of a place or something. So just, if you're renting your place out, have it bug-free. If that means you gotta spray it every day, then do that. If not, it just has to be bug-free. Vince, did you have something you wanted to add? I got a little note here that, and I know you're gonna be super brief.
Not like the first guy. I have to say, we need to thank several of you guys, Randy Plummer for his talk about the fire, which is major, this gentleman about the sewer systems. But if our county, as a county, went in and set the rules for amount of parties that can belong in a house, 80% of the problems we've been talking about today are solved. So I believe that that's something that maybe the health department and the county officials need to sit down and come up with. Because I know we have Airbnbs, we don't allow more than 2 people, but that's us. Okay, are we doing right? I feel yes, but that's not my decision. It needs to be a decision that the county says, 2-bedroom home, you're allowed X. 4-bedroom home, you're allowed X, instead of this 20 people per unit. And if the county puts those ordinances in effect, that's gonna solve a lot of our problems. And then secondly, if your kid goes out and gets in trouble, gets a traffic ticket on the street, are you responsible to pay for that or him? He is, right? I don't care if he's 16 years old. Why should the owners of the dwellings be responsible for the parties that are renting those out? They should not be, but the party that's renting them out should be liable for whatever actions they are taking. And that's something that through ordinances, our county could set that up, and it would be a lot easier on all of us. We wouldn't be here. I mean, most of us that come up here, we rattle on about nothing, and that's not what we need. I've done a lot of development over the years, and if you put down the rules and regulations, period, not per units, multifamily needs to abide by the same rules, single-family homes need to abide by the same rules as the Airbnb does. And if the county put those ordinances in place, it would help a lot, Steve. That's about all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Last person, Hal Key.
Well, thank you, Board of Supervisors, and thank you for your efforts so far. I just want to say in the play Romeo and Juliet, at the end of the play, the prince comes in and all the dead bodies are laying on the floor, and he asks, "What happened here?" And the friar says, "I will be brief." and he tells the whole story. I'm not going to tell the whole story. I'm going to address two things. First, I'm a licensed mechanical engineer. I have designed plumbing systems, very large plumbing systems. I've also designed septic systems for a number of different types of occupancies. My suggestion on the occupancy, because you have it tied to 2 people per bedroom, in many cases, that septic system is over-designed for a 1-bedroom house. Mine that I just built this last year, it actually will support 3 bedrooms, even though I will only have 1 bedroom in the facility. So if we tie this to 2 per bedroom, or include the or, as allowed by the discharge permit for that property. There is a property that I'm aware of in Hagler Creek that's a large lodge. They have at least 5 or 6 bathrooms. By this ordinance, they can only have 25 in that facility, even though they can easily sleep 50. And I also want to address the term bedroom. Nowhere in the international codes, including the International Residential Code, which the county has adopted for residential construction, do they use the term bedroom. Nowhere in the international codes do they use the term bedroom. Every instance, they talk about sleeping area. Now, a sleeping area may be a room, but they don't call it a bedroom. The only place where the term bedroom occurs is in ADEQ's rules and their interpretation of that. And so if we tied the occupancy to the discharge permit, that could allow a greater occupancy than more than 2 per bedroom on a facility if that septic system is already designed for that discharge. Second, this last 6 months, I've had the opportunity to talk to some senior members of the sheriff's office. And by the way, I'm very disappointed that you don't have a member of the sheriff's office who can speak for the sheriff's office here today. I've already had that discussion with at least one of the supervisors in the past. When it comes to the response on a problem on a property, I was told, and this is from a member who can speak for the sheriff's office, that they do exactly what Michelle Nelson suggested a year ago last April if there's a problem on one of these properties. They call the platform and they file a complaint with the platform, and the platform evicts the problem people. And so the sheriff's office is already doing that when they have the opportunity. But in many cases, it sounds like those that are having complaints with these short-term rentals are not enlisting the assistance of the sheriff's office. They're trying to handle it on their own or getting another county employee to solve that problem instead of going to the sheriff's office. That's all I had.
Thank you, Mr. Key. Michael, you have something?
Sure, I'd like to sort of go over information regarding how a septic permit is issued in Gila County, just to give everybody here a little bit brief history of that. So if you as a property owner want to build a home, you come in and you give us engineered plans for a septic system, say a 2-bedroom home, and there are special ADEQ requirements for that based on mathematical calculations. How many bedrooms are there, how many fixtures, that kind of stuff. And then we base that septic size that needs to be on those calculations, and then we give the permit, a discharge permit for that. Most of the homes in Gila County, we issue permits based on what is given to us, a 3-bedroom home. In the future, can you expand that system? Yes. You'll have to add on to the septic system. Or are there occasions where a homeowner plans ahead and says, I have a 2-bedroom and maybe I want to turn this into 4-bedroom in the future, and I don't want to go through the cost of applying for a septic system increase 10 years from now. So they will submit expanded plans for a 4-bedroom home, but build a 2-bedroom. The majority of homes in Gila County, the permits issued are for the exact calculations or what size home they're giving us. There are exceptions, but not many. I just wanted to clarify that.
And if I can also clarify that, he's correct on that regard. However, there are minimum sizes of septic tanks that allow larger occupancies. And then the leach fields or disposal fields are also sized for a minimum amount as well, not just on that one metric. And so that you need to look at the metrics on how those are sized, and you need to look at the discharge permit, because the discharge permit will have what's allowed.
Thank you, Mr. Key. Verla, you have something else?
With the fact that, you know, the sheriffs have been calling Airbnb and VRBO, with that thought, the sheriffs have been calling Airbnb and VRBO. Michelle and I put out in our community letter the numbers to call at Airbnb and VRBO if there was a concern. And that has really taken away the majority of the problem in our neighborhood because people have called those numbers. But maybe those numbers could be added on the deal that we have to post on our door, so that if a deputy does come out and he doesn't know the number, all he has to do is look and it says, contact Airbnb at this number, contact VRBO at this number, or whatever platform you're on, that we could provide it. That's pretty simple.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm about to move on. Do you have any comments you'd like to add, Supervisor Humphrey?
No, I just feel that once we get an ordinance passed, then we'll know more of who the bad players and things are, because we'll have more regulation on what's going on. You know, how many sheriff's calls to these addresses, because the sheriff will have those addresses and know what are Airbnbs or whatever, and what are residences. The sheriff will know that. And so, you know, we can keep working on an ordinance. Will there ever be a perfect ordinance? No, I don't believe so. But I think the sooner we can get one passed, the sooner we can go forward with getting permits, so that we know the numbers of how many are here. And we know the problems that are the ones that are creating problems and the ones that are not. I mean, we can pick things apart, and the discharge may be a good idea, but some of these older homes, we don't know what they've got in the ground perhaps, because it's grandfathered in. So are we gonna dig up to see what they have? And oh my God, you got a cesspool that's outlawed, now you're shut down. I don't wanna open that can of worms, you know? So we, you know, we're trying to find a balance here. And I think once we get an ordinance, the better we can start working on what needs to be controlled and what we really need to look at as far as things. And I appreciate everybody's input, because, you know, we do really, I think this board tries to work for the public. That's why we keep having these, so that we can hear from you on what's going on. And I do believe that our staff, if someone has an issue with a building or something of that nature, it's not an automatic violation. We try to help you. And then if you don't let us help you in the direction that you need to go, yeah, then it becomes a violation. But I you know, I thank everybody for their comments, because that helps us kind of balance the pendulum instead of just do what's recommended. And so I thank you all very much. And is it a difficult deal? Is it ever going to be perfect? Is everybody ever going to be happy with it? No, and I can't apologize for that, because we're just trying to balance everything here. And so the closer we can get to a balance and not all one-sided or not all stringent, then I think that's what we're trying to do. So I appreciate you all very much, and as we go forward with an ordinance, I just know not everybody's gonna be happy, but we can work on that from there, once we know more of the complaints that we're trying to regulate. So thank you, Mr. Chair, that's all I have.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Klein.
Well, we're getting closer. That's what I think. And you know, after going over all this again, there was still some newer ideas and some newer thoughts. And I think that that needs to be hashed out a little bit. And one is the numbers, the occupancy loads. I think that really needs to be looked at hard. And I know it might put you in a bad corner to work through, Josh, but I have all the faith in the world of you. So, but overall, I think we've come a long ways. I think there's definitely been a lot of work to it. And it's something that we need to go ahead and try and work these last little issues out and move on. And if that goes to you guys working with Bob and Adam, then I'm all for it personally. But I think we're really, really close to getting something started. And everybody needs to keep in mind, just because we come up with something that we think that'll work, in 6 months or a year, we may find out that it doesn't work and we're changing it again. So that's what I like in one respect with an ordinance. It's a working document, and we have that right to work with it, unless our lawyer tells us no, and she's not going to do that. So, so I guess with that, thank you everybody for being here today. I know for you guys from Young and Payson and wherever it's a long drive, but I really appreciate seeing you here in the audience. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor. And so I do thank everyone as well. A lot of good comments. And I know it's a little brutal getting through all of it, and it's time consuming. But it shows that we are respectful to your concerns and as we're trying to work this through. And so there's about 2 things that I noticed seem to be something that we might want to reevaluate, and that is the in-person response. Does it have to be in person, or can it be just a contact of some nature? That seemed to be something to relook at. And then to me, I honestly, just my own personal feeling on a structure that has 3 or 4 bedrooms, it's one structure. I think that should be one fee versus separate cabins, separate structures, separate rentals that way. So that's my opinion, and I'm going to leave it at that. So, all right. So if we're ready to move on, I sure am. Item 2B is information discussion regarding the history of the Gila County Fairground. And who's going to present? Michael.
Well, a little less crowded now, sir. So, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So, a while back, Supervisor Humphrey approached me and asked me to do some research on the fairgrounds and the property in Gila County, some historical perspective, and my management associate, Retta, back there, spent a couple weeks actually in the courthouse here going through past histories of the Board of Supervisors in Gila County. And it was a fascinating trip, that's for sure. It started back in 1964. That's what our records go all the way back to, up until now. And so what I have included, part of this item is a 32-page historical perspective on the fairgrounds property that Retta was able to extrapolate just those items from the past board meetings and put them in this kind of a format. And so I'd like to have a discussion with that. Prior to my discussion, I will say I've looked at this 32-page history for the fairgrounds multiple times, and the one thing that stands out clearly is that community members and the Board of Supervisors have always worked hand in hand to get things done on the fairgrounds. Policies have changed. They've come back. They've gone away. They've come back. It's interesting to see the Board of Supervisors and how that fairgrounds property has changed dramatically over time. But the community leaders that put in a lot of their unpaid volunteer time, they were constantly in front of the Board of Supervisors asking for work to be done, asking for money for some of this work to be done, fundraising on their end to get some of this work done. So if it's one thing that I took out of this, this historical perspective, is that the community and the Board of Supervisors have always worked together with this property to try and improve it, to hold events out there, to bring the community closer together and people from outside to enjoy Gila County. And that became quite clear in the documents. I do want to say that one of the questions I've been asked in the past is who owns that property? That seems to be some people in the community, residents have always asked who really does own that property. And part of the package I included in this item was the deed to the property, which Gila County government did purchase that property from the State Land Department years ago for a set upon price. There are a couple deed restrictions on that purchase, including you have to have a racetrack there, and of all things, you have to have like a mechanical building, which is a little unusual. But those are a couple of deed restrictions that don't pose any kind of a future problem with any kind of expansion with what we do out there in the fairgrounds at all. So that's to answer that question. Gila County does in fact own the property, but we've always worked, the Board of Supervisors has always worked with staff and the volunteers out there to make that facility better, more events, and I think that's what we'll continue to do as we move forward. But I know there's people here from the public, and I don't know if anybody has any comments or anything they'd like to, if you'd like to have a comment, you have to fill out a paper and come on up here and give your perspective. But we do have the University of Arizona representatives here, and we also have part of the Fair Committee here, because the Fair Committee does receive funding from the state to operate the county fair. So that's how it gets done. It's all on them and a lot of volunteer time. So, but I'd be happy to answer any questions possible.
Supervisor Humphrey.
Except from 1964 to 2024.
Yeah, and Fred and Michael, thank you very, very much. Because the fairgrounds is really important to me. I worked out there for a long time with Joe Levine, and so the 4-H and everything is real important. The fair, the rodeo, those kind of things. And so now a lot of things in District 2 are taking care of the bridge and things like that. I jumping into the fairgrounds. I mean, it got to where it was for dust and bird shit, not people and events. And so I wanna do all I can to help that. And so, thankful to staff and funds, we were able to get a second arena out there and bathrooms so that we could put in for high school rodeo finals and perhaps different ropings and things with 4-H with 2 different arenas. You can have more things going on. And then we ran into an electrical issue. Things are not as they should be out there. We need to upgrade because we rent generators and light plants and everything's just to operate the things we do now, which puts a burden on the fair people because they get state money, and then if a lot of it's got to go for electricity, it burdens them or it burdens us to help them, and that's all money that could go to different issues. And then it seemed to me every time that fair and racing and 4-H came along, it was like there seems to just be a real unsettlement, of who's what, who has what, who owns what, who's responsible for what. And it's like we just kind of get in a cat fight, and next thing the fair's over and the racing's over, things are over, and then it kind of dies down. But all of a sudden here comes the fair, and here comes this, and all of a sudden all this gets up in the air again. And so that's why, I had some constituents come to me and they said, here's what we understand that it is. And, 4-H is everything and this and that. And it's like, I'm not saying they're not, but I don't know for sure. And so I asked Michael to look into this and Retta, and like you say, we've got a document that goes from May of 1964 to September of 2002. And so, you know, anybody that wants to read this, you know, the decisions made on the fairgrounds, the supervisors that were on the board that did it, and who was on the Fair and Racing Commission at the time, or whoever, and what individuals put a lot of time in it and what didn't. And so thank you very much for this. And by this, we know that Gila County now owns the fairgrounds. That's some good information going forward. And to work with people as we go forward. So, you know, I don't have any questions other than where we're gonna get the money to better improve the fairground. But I mean, in all of your research, I have no questions. It's not a matter of opinion. It's not a matter of who's what. It's a matter of what the board at that time approved for that facility out there and who approved it. And so we're trying to go forward with that information. And so make it the best that we can. And so now as we work together as a community with FAIR and with 4-H, it's like now we've got a little better perimeter because it's our stuff and you may have some stuff there. Then let's work together because, you know, how can we better use it? And because, you know, you bought the stalls, that doesn't mean 4-H can't use them or the fair can't use them. It needs to be it needs to be a group situation and not me, mine. And so going forward, I think that your research, in my opinion, will help us sit down and be able to go forward with a more stable attitude than we've had in the past. Because it came to me that if we don't do certain things, then it'll revert back to the state. Well, I can appreciate that someone sat in that Board of Supervisors meeting when that was said, but they didn't go to the one that said, we bought it. Do you know? So things have changed. And so I think this is good information for all of us to work forward in making that a more productive recreational facility for Gila County to use, because we're centrally located, and you know, and have better arrangements there for, you know, for the 4-H participants from Payson can show their stock here, and so, you know, then we can move forward. And so I appreciate the research very much, and I hope it will lead to more common ground with everybody's interest in that facility, using it and making it a better place to go. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Klein.
I love history, and it was really cool looking at all that, but it did not surprise me. You say it was started in 64. I was born in 63. I grew up with going to the fairground from the time I was little bitty to the horse races and everything that had to offer there, to the fairs and everything else. So there's no doubt. The Board of Supervisors put that together for a reason when they did it. And horse racing was part of it, but so was the opportunity for the community to use it and the kids to be a part of it and for it to continue on and to grow. There's no doubt in my mind. When I look at the list of names and people that's involved in that in the past, back then, I knew most of those people. They're gone now, unfortunately, but I knew those people, and I can assure you that's what they wanted. It wasn't to be hassled over. It wasn't to be argued over on what belonged to who or who could use it and who couldn't. And so that's where I really want to start at, is why it's there to begin with. It seems like in more recent years, the fairgrounds had been put aside. When we started in 2017, there hadn't been really anything done with the fairgrounds except a fair. And it was a hard deal to pull off. People were struggling. A lot of volunteers, not a lot of money thrown out there. It was tough, but they kept it going. And so when I sit and I listen and I hear from different people the issues or the bickering or whatever it is, sometimes I can't help but say, hey, folks, step back and put your big boy pants on and let's talk about this. We should all have a goal in mind, and that is to support our community on whatever that is. If I'm just going to throw out an example, if we set and threw out fees for the fairgrounds, but people can't afford it, then let's don't do it. That fairgrounds wasn't set there for the county to make money off of. That fairgrounds was put there to support this community and the surrounding communities. Back when it was started, the Payson had its own fair up there. And that's continued until here more recently. Pleasant Valley had its own fair. Pine had its own fair and things like that. Those have dried up now to where all these participants need to come down here and use the fairgrounds here to be a part of the fair. And that is where I'm proud, at least we have the fairgrounds, and we're putting money into the fairgrounds to allow this to happen. I think I've seen it a lot. I really have. And somebody will get mad at somebody else and whatever. But I just wish they'd sit back and have a cup of coffee and talk about it, and let's get on with it. As far as ownership of the fairgrounds, there was no doubt in my mind who owned the fairgrounds. That was never even a question in my mind. And you got to take in consideration is back when that fairgrounds was established, Gila County had 3 separate districts. They functioned differently. They had their own budgets differently, the whole 9 yards. It wasn't until more recent years that the county consolidated and it all became one. But still, when they put those fairgrounds together, all 3 board of supervisors came together on that and did it. It wasn't just one. It was all of them. And I think that's a real big key in this too. And I don't worry about our board sitting here today. I might in the future when maybe we're not here, but we're here to support that fairgrounds. The fairgrounds is a county project. It takes 2 of us 3 to approve any kind of dollars that goes into that fairgrounds. And we've all supported the fairgrounds, all 3 of us. We're 100% behind the 4-H and the kids. And I think from my standpoint, I just would like to just continue on, improve those fairgrounds, make sure they're getting used. That's another thing. We stick a ton of money in there, and then people can't use them because they can't afford a fee or they can't afford this or that. No, back up. You know, we want the fairgrounds to shine. We want it to be a focal point for Gila County. We want it to be a place that people can come have their series rope-ins or their whatever, mud bogs, whatever it is. We want that to be a destination in Gila County, and we want to do it right. And so I'm just glad that we're able to be as far along as we have. We put a ton of money into that fairgrounds. We're not just throwing money at it and not getting the use out of it. People are using it. My intention is, I'm here for 4 more years, and that is to make sure that fairgrounds can be used. You know, if there's fees associated with whatever, and people can't afford it, but it's a legitimate group or whatever it is, we need to work with that. We need to do what we can with the people as well. What we don't need is the bickering and fighting that has been in that fairgrounds. We don't need that. And I'm real serious about that. If people have issues, and if they have issues with something maybe they think we're doing or saying, please, by all means, call us up and come talk to us, because we need to keep that fairgrounds going forward. It really needs to be the attraction of Gila County. And it is a Gila County project. And it does take 2 of the 3 of us to approve anything on that. And that's another big thing to know as well. But right now, you've got 3 of us sitting here that totally support the fairgrounds. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you, Michael, and for everyone involved in compiling this history. It's very interesting, and yeah, I think we all look forward to improving that, creating more opportunity for the public, because the purpose of government sometimes, for instance, in this case, is to provide a venue or provide something that's not easily provided by individuals in the public. And so the fairgrounds is an important asset that we have. And we had, I think, a number of 4-H representatives here. They apparently had to leave early. So I don't have anything about anyone wants to make any additional comments. So.
I got just one more thing to say too.
Okay.
Because I did get hung up on the groups and stuff used in the fairgrounds, but what I didn't say is when we have a 4-H event or we have a roping going on there, that brings the outside money into this community. That outside money is real important to us as well. So that's the added revenue that is sitting there that we need to capitalize on and get in here. You know, they stay in our hotels, they eat or in our restaurants, they buy the gas that we use for HERF dollars. They do all these things. And so by supporting the groups that want to put on functions and to use the fairgrounds, like the Gym and Minerals Show, draws in a lot of people. And that's where our revenues from a county comes from, a lot of it, so.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Yeah, for instance, I've been in meetings with Freeport who wants to bring name artists to Gila County. Not only for their employees, but for the people of Gila County. And so they want to do it at the fairgrounds, which is a compliment. But the restrictions is how many people can we put at the fairgrounds? What will our existing electricity tolerate at the fairgrounds? So the discussion was not who do we want to bring, who will they ask to come depending on what we can furnish, what parking do we have, what facility do we have, and how many people will that hold? Then they're going to look for an artist that usually attracts that many people. I would love to have a fairgrounds tell them, call George Strait. We got plenty of space for him. You know, but I mean, that's kind of the situation we're in and have available too. If it someday we work together and can get funding and get, you know, public input. I remember when the rodeo came, they had a deal downtown and, you know, all the businesses took part, you know, wild horse saddling and all this kind of stuff. You know, that interest is kind of gone, and I'd like to see it come back because I would like to have a facility like that. Like I say, if someone said, hey, we'd like to bring something to your community, what do you have to offer us? Like, bring whatever you want, we can help you. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because going forward, it's not, you know, build it there, come. It's there already here, we just don't have the facility for them. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Well, you have any more?
Just a couple quick comments.
Yes.
So, Mr. Menlove over the last couple of years has applied for federal earmarks. We're trying to get money to improve the fairgrounds, and unfortunately, we've been turned down for the last couple of years. So the county administration is certainly working towards trying to get as many grants out there as possible to improve it. And in the near future, one of the items Mr. Menlove has asked my facilities director, myself, to come in front of the board for consideration is the first phase electrical improvements out at the fairgrounds. We'll be presenting that soon to the board for consideration. To improve the electrical supply out there, it takes 2 different phases to get everything up to snuff. But the first phase is to improve what we have up there and bring all the fixtures we have up there to current electrical code. And then the next phase would be to increase that power supply, which would allow us to hopefully, 4-H would love this, and U of A, to not bring so many generators out there for the county fair and some other events as well.
Yeah, because that rent money could be used for other things other than just equipment.
So, go ahead, James. I just had one question. It may take you to answer it. So when you went through all this history on that, Michael, how did it come about for the prison? Is that actually on the 100+ acres that the fairgrounds owns, or is that on a different parcel of state land?
I don't really know that, Supervisor. This particular research was just the fairgrounds property and not the prison, but I could certainly do some research on that.
I've always been curious as, you know, if it was actually something that was negotiated with the county and state to build the complex there or whatever.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Klein, that is on a separate parcel. That is state land. And that's why the whole property out there is state land and why we are working to acquire an additional 280 acres near that property is because it is state land.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
we do have Hannah McDaniel here from the Fair Board,
Okay.
and we are within weeks of the Gila County Fair for 2024. And I wondered if it's all right with you, Mr. Chairman, if Hannah wanted to plug the Gila County Fair that is coming real quick.
Yeah, please
For
come
just
up.
a moment.
And we have the Northern Gila County Fair that will be coming in Payson around September, I can't remember the dates, September, yeah.
Hi,
Good
thank
mo-
you.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So our fair here in Globe will be September 25th through the 28th. We have lots planned for our 4-day event: mud bogs, demo cross, rodeo, ranch rodeo, livestock auction, livestock shows, and then a few other entertainment items strewn throughout the fair. So we're excited. I will say one thing, everybody that I bring in for this event, whether it be rodeo, whether it be entertainment on the track, they love our facility. They think it's great. They love our rodeo arenas. They love the open space on top, kind of to be able to do whatever we need to with. It's been great. So I appreciate all the help and support from Gila County.
Thank you for everything you do. Supervisor Humphrey.
No, just thank you for all you do. I get paid for what I do, you volunteer. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Absolutely, Hannah. Is there something else that you need from us? I mean, if there is, you just give it James.
There you go.
No, James has been great.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I will add with Hannah and her whole team that she has of volunteers, as you know, to Supervisor Klein. It's a year-round thing that they have to do.
Yeah, it's not
Hours.
it's not a month out of the year, it's 12 months.
12 months, hours and hours and hours that they do contributing their own time to put on the fair, as well as I know that they do in the Northern Gila County Fair as well. We have Renee Carstens with the U of A Cooperative Extension. A couple things that we've been working on is, as you pointed out, Supervisor Klein, to work with them to formalize an agreement that the U of A Cooperative Extension as a governmental entity as defined and all. We've gone through a bunch of legal stuff with Jessica, but that they are through the cooperative extension, the 4-H and that group can use the fairgrounds at no charge. And we're formalizing an agreement for that. And did you have anything you wanted to say, Renee, with permission of Chairman?
Yeah, please come up, Renee. Good to have you with us.
I'm glad to be here. Just have a comment, just saying that we've come a long ways in this last year as far as building a stronger relationship, understanding. That's why I'm here, to learn today, find out a little bit more about the history, and just appreciate the ongoing regular meetings that have been established now with our county manager, so that even if there's not a lot, sometimes we have quite a bit to cover with as an agenda, and other times nothing's on the agenda, but we're still meeting so that we have that opportunity to continue to build a relationship and understanding and learn. So I really appreciate that, and thank you. Thanks for going through this and this opportunity for us to hear and learn a little bit more about the history as well. Thank you.
Supervisors, good? We're good? Thank you.
Finally, Mr. Chairman, if I could, wanted to point out that we do have Bianca here. That is, her assignment is to manage the fairgrounds, and she works with facilities, and so we've been putting that effort to try and be able to schedule events and make sure that we are utilizing the fairgrounds. So you say that brings traffic into Gila County. Yes, absolutely. And so Bianca, And the rest of the facilities teams, thank you for what you're doing to make sure that we're utilizing the asset that we have.
You're not gonna let them get off that easy, are you, James?
That's up to you. If you want Bianca to come and have a chance to answer questions, then we certainly can.
That's good.
Only if she would like to.
Come tell us what you got scheduled.
Tell us what your daily activities and things that you've been working on to get people here in Gila County.
Yeah, thank you, Bianca, for all that you do. Just give us a brief rundown on what's in your world.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, I mean, I've really been reaching out to facilities. I am in talks with the high school rodeo, hoping we can be added to their schedule. Not this year, next year. Bringing those in, pulling the numbers. What we brought in, I don't remember if it was 22 or 23. Throughout the whole year, I pulled that in 4 months of the beginning of this year. So I am reaching out, getting things. I mean, literally everybody that I talk to, I'm making sure to, and we do upgrades. I visit out there often just to make sure that, things are getting done and it does look better. Our techs do great out there. So I do feel like everything is coming together. More things are being brought to, to the town, and people are realizing that is there. So it's going great.
Supervisor Humphrey?
Yeah, no, just thank you for all you do. And I would just like to remind everybody, if you want to do something out there, we have a 12-month calendar. I don't know if you're into a 24-month calendar as of yet.
No, we do. I can.
But if you want to book something, call Bianca and book it, because it does fill up, and we're trying to grow the facility so it doesn't fill up so fast, that we have more room for people to do things and have available to things. But right now we're limited to what we have, and scheduling is important. And so think a little ahead. If you're going to get married next year, where you might want to have it, you might want to book it a little bit in advance or something of that nature, because we are starting to have events out there, and I want to have more events out there. So scheduling is extremely important, and so Bianca can help with that. So I just wanted to let everybody know, and people that are on the computer to know that, think ahead a little bit, because you might think, well, the fairgrounds, I'll call them and let them know we're coming next weekend. It's like, no, that's probably not going to work. So I just wanted to remind everybody that, think ahead and reach out, and we'll keep trying to make more availability for scheduling. So thank you.
Supervisor Klein, anything?
Bianca, thank you. Yeah, I'd like to see it to where you're booked out 2 years ahead.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Good. Don't weaken, just keep going, and it'll be good. But thank you for what you're doing, and hopefully we'll keep adding to it and make a bigger and better facility. So.
Yes, and I do thank you guys for all of your support and, sticking behind us and helping us get to where we need to be.
Thank you, Bianca.
Thank you.
And everyone involved.
Can I, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just add 2 more things. That the electrical has been mentioned, that we do have a more firm price on what getting our current electrical up to grade, to code, is, instead of the 650 that you heard last.
Are we discussing future board business in a work session?
I'm giving you information.
Okay. But okay.
I think I can give information that price is closer to 250,000 than the 650 that has been given recently. And we're looking for potentially portable bleachers. That is again mentioned of a difficulty we have of not having bleachers, that we're looking at portable bleachers that can be used at not only fairgrounds but different things that we can work with the community on. So that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah, we have some significant challenges with capital improvements this coming year, so We'll be discussing all of that. Thank you. If that's enough for item 2B, we'll go on to item 2C, information discussion action to amend resolution number 24-08-03 and the attachments to resolution number 24-0803 as required by the Arizona Department of Revenue Property Tax Oversight Commission. Good afternoon, Marin.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Supervisor Humphrey, Supervisor Klein. When we sent our property tax rates and levies to the Department of Revenue Property Tax Oversight Commission last week following your adoption, they shared with us that we needed to do, we needed to include their 2-year comparison form. So we've just brought that to you today. Last year we used that form also. We just sent it to them as an additional attachment. It's here for you today so that the resolution reflects that attachment, and we'll use that going forward for our constituents' ease of use, peace of mind, and reference. Both our traditional form and the Department of Revenue's 2-year comparison are on the website at this time. I will update the resolution when I get it signed back from you.
Thank you, Marin. Supervisor Humphrey.
No questions.
Supervisor Klein.
I don't believe I have any either. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much. With that, I'll call for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to amend resolution number 24-08-03 and the attachment to resolution number 24-08-03 as required by the Arizona Department of Revenue Property Tax Oversight Commission.
Mr. Chair, I'll second that.
We have a motion to approve and seconded. Those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, and we'll come to item number 3, call to the public. We can open that up to anyone here in Globe. Anyone here in Globe? No. Anyone on the internet? No. And we have Bev Miller with us in Payson. And Bev, if it's all right, I'm going to give you a time limit. And I realize 3 minutes for you just doesn't probably work. So how about I give you 5?
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Okay.
I'm trying to be brief. Can you hear me okay? Because it sounds a bit echoey here. Can you hear me?
Not too well.
But we can hear you.
Is there something I can do to
Okay, that's better.
help that?
Yeah, that's better.
Because I can hear myself echo a lot.
Okay.
Okay, I'll just try to talk as fast as possible, and hopefully you can hear it, because I feel like I'm stunned at, first of all, at the width and the breadth of the knowledge that the Board of Supervisors has to have. You guys, it blows my mind how much information and experience that you need. And so I really give a lot of credit to you to face all of the things as well as you do. I really appreciate that. I'm actually, it's a different subject. It's not head count. It's different. It's actually, to me, a great substitute that's much, much faster and efficient than hand count. So, not that I'm leaving hand count, it's still important, but I feel like you're going to be very pleased because I'm introducing a tool that will save you a lot of time as election supervisors. You've got a lot of hats, one of them being you have to supervise elections, right? And this system is called an AIM system. And I'm just going to read it. A county has been testing it, an Arizona county. And I have been very pleased to be involved with the AIM multi-partisan team. It's multi-partisan, all the different parties, in testing this system. I'm going to save time. I'm just going to read a summary of it. So, I'm introducing AIM, and it's called ABE. I will send you this through email and let you, look at it in your own time. It's basically introducing AIM, revolutionizing election transparency and auditing to restore public trust. And the multi-partisan team is made up of mainly John Brakey was the creator. He is a Democrat, and he is very strong on transparency. And so A, let me first just say, it stands for A Better Education, ABE, and also honors Abraham Lincoln's commitment to transparency and the public's right to information. A is a groundbreaking tool that redefines how we audit and verify elections by directly linking ballot images to the cast vote record. And that's, as you probably know, our ES&S DS850 tabulator takes an image of every ballot that is counted, and it also produces a cast vote record for every ballot. And so it allows users to confirm that the votes are counted exactly as cast. And this is particularly important. This is a post-election auditing system. And it's particularly important in our county to have this kind of system because, for example, in the last election, we did not have a post-election audit because, unfortunately, only one party was represented. And I think you all got an email about that situation. I don't want it to be repeated in the general election. We do need to have a post-election audit as required by the statutes. But anyway, so basically, the AID system is designed to handle a variety of voting methods, whether early, mail-in, or provisional, ensuring that every vote is counted for with unmatched precision. It simplifies the often complex process of ballot management by organizing ballot images into separate precinct files, each paired with its corresponding CVR database. So cast vote records, basically, you probably know this, but there's a database of all the cast vote records. There's also a file for each of the records. So you've got two different cast vote record informations. So, so why is this important? In today's environment where trust in the electoral process is more crucial than ever, AID stands out by enabling precinct-level audits. Precincts serve as the most accurate historical records and are the backbone of election.
Okay. Mrs. Miller.
I think you finished just this one paragraph, right? By
Okay.
focusing on this granular level of detail, A, promotes transparency. I know it's hard to concentrate, please. A critical factor in restoring confidence in our democratic system and bridging the divisions that have plagued our nation. I'm going to stop right there because what I want to know is I want to be on the agenda so that this can be brought up again. Mr. John Brakey, he's a Democrat who created this system, and I've been working with him closely. He is making himself available to come to a work session and describe the system to you. It is free to the counties of Arizona, just know that. And so, basically, you know, can he come? Can it be a work session for him to come and speak with you, either by Zoom or in person?
Thank you, Bev. Yeah, thank you. Since it's not on the agenda, we don't make comments right now. So, but thank you for that presentation. Okay.
This should be, can you talk about it? I know you can't say yes or no.
Yeah. I can't understand what she's saying.
Yes, if we can talk about it.
No, we can't talk about it right now. It needs to be on the agenda. That's correct. Thank you, Bev.
Well, I appreciate your attention, and I will send this information to you because it is important. And I will send it to you, and I will expect a response. Unfortunately, I don't know have not gotten responses from you, so, you know, I'd rather not have that happen this time.
We'll get together another time, okay?
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Menlove, do you have a report?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to pass today.
Mr. Humphreys?
Just a short one. I'll attend a project team meeting tomorrow. I'll be at a Gila public meeting on Saturday the 31st, and I'll hold the Tonto Basin Community Meeting on the 3rd at 5 p.m.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Klein?
I don't, Mr. Chair. Coming up, we have a meeting with a coalition of counties on updating the county land use plan. And so I'm gonna get with Mr. James and ask Kathy to attend that for me, but other than that, it's pretty quiet right now.
Okay, thank you. I don't have anything to report. So at this time, I will call for a motion to adjourn into executive session.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
And I'll second it.
Okay, those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Convene this regular session and call for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion for staff to proceed as discussed.
Oh, hang on, I'm sorry. Samantha? I'm sorry.
That's okay. We'll have to-
I didn't notice you were not there.
I was really running, I promise. Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Then we're reconvening the Board of Supervisors regular session, and I will call for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion for staff to proceed as discussed in the executive session.
And I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. I will adjourn this meeting.